the photographers from the communication team are going to take photos all evening. So just keep smiling. Now, item 1, apologies. Have we apologies?
Apologies for absence having received from Councillor Les Fry. Okay. Apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Les Fry, Councillor Sarah Williams, Councillor Belinda Rideout and Councillor Julie Robinson.
Thank you. Item 2, the minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes. Are you happy that I sign both sets of minutes after the meeting? Thank you. Item 3, any declarations of interest? No, thank you very much. Item 4, the Chair's announcement. First of all, I'd like to welcome again the Youth Council, and we're going to hear from Tom, Josh and Jayden what they have been doing recently.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Josh, and I've had the privilege of being part of Dorset Youth Voice for the past 4 years. It's great to be here today, speaking up for the young people across Dorset. Today, we're here to talk about us, Dorset Youth Voice, in particular the Dorset Youth Council. Dorset Youth Council is a group of young people from an array of backgrounds, from young carers, the care experienced, and some who work in education themselves, coming together from across the county. Some from urban areas such as Weymouth and Dorchester, others on the complete opposite side of Dorset, living in villages that some have never heard of.
I'm Jayden, and like Josh, I've been part of Dorset Youth Voice for 4 years. And as a diverse group, we've all made very different points and ideas come together. Last year, as a part of a national initiative called Make Your Mark ballot, young people from a number of local school councils, town youth councils, and Dorset Youth Council met to discuss and share ideas about what issues matter to them most. These were then developed and translated into the current Dorset Youth Council manifesto. This explores what young people from across Dorset need, which is not already available through other avenues, or that some towns and villages may offer due to our incredibly diverse county.
Hello, I'm Tom, and I'm the Member of Youth Parliament for Dorset. This manifesto included points such as safe spaces for young people, that being physical or virtual. Right now, there aren't enough safe spaces for young people to go. When there are spaces, they're often too far away, too costly, or simply not welcoming enough. Our aim is to find local venues, figure out the costs and create more accessible spaces. It's about ensuring young people in Dorset have places to go where they can feel welcomed.
Alongside this, we discussed the possibility of greater social opportunities. This can incorporate these safe spaces, which do need to be more than just somewhere to hang out. They should be somewhere that can foster development and well-being, whether it's through sports, music, art, or simply having somewhere to meet new people. Young people need spaces that can offer an environment that can help them grow into the best version of themselves. These opportunities also need to be intertwined with young people's already busy day-to-day lives, giving further opportunities at home and at school.
And our final main point was to hone in on physical activity in particular, given its large impact on both physical and mental health. Giving more social opportunity and a safe space for many young people, it was almost, the perfect link across all the ideas we'd had. We as a group see that many young people do not access sport groups or facilities due to the factors such as lack of confidence, availability, transport, cost, distance. The list is never ending. And this is something working with your local alliance groups and the town council to consider.
Another key issue is making sure young people's voices are heard when it comes to actioning these points. For example, the Dorset Education Safeguarding Board recently approached us about exploring with young people what it might feel like to have mobile phones/smartphones banned in schools. This topic affects many young people, and its impact is upon all young people, and it's vital our views are considered when these decisions are being made.
What's being done at the moment is only the beginning. The goal is not to just talk about it, but to take the action. The aim is to ensure that young people in Dorset have access to the hobbies, spaces, groups, and opportunities that they desire, but also that their voices are right. But for this to happen, the support of you is essential.
It's about more than just increasing the number of spaces or groups. It's about improving the quality of what's already available. Young people in Dorset already have spaces to go, but we need to make sure that it meets their needs. For example, we've looked into reducing costs in gyms to reduce the financial burdens that many young people do face.
This is where your support is needed. The Dorset Youth Council is committed to speaking on behalf of young people across the county who want this change. but we would like your involvement in this, as at the end of the day, you know your ward and young people best. Together, Dorset can create change that will generally make a difference in many people's lives. If you want to get involved, please contact a member of the Youth Voice team. We'd be more than happy to invite you to one of our meetings.
And finally, thank you for listening. Together we can make change and a difference by listening to what young people in Dorset truly do want.
Thank you very much for that great introduction to the work you do in Dorset. And hopefully we'll see you at all council meetings in the future. Thank you. The second part of my announcement is something we all know about. This is Matt Prosser's last meeting as our Chief Executive. In a few weeks, Matt will be leaving Dorset after 5 years as Chief Executive of our council. I first met Matt in 2014 when he moved from Oxfordshire to become Chief Executive of West Dorset District Council. He brought much needed new ideas to that authority. It was like a breath of fresh air. After a few years, realising that local government was changing, he led the process of local government reorganisation in Dorset, replacing 9 authorities with 2 new councils, as Dorset Council and BCP. That was an enormous task. Matt was appointed Chief Executive of the new council before its formation. All the 6 former councils and councillors making up this authority had many different views on how it should settle, and many arguments. But with Matt and his team working hard, we now have a council of which he can be proud. A council with a good reputation for service delivery, innovation and transformation. Matt has also been recognised nationally for his local government work and has been president of SOLAS, the Senior Officers Organisation, since 2023. We are grateful for the guidance and leadership you have given to us. It's been great to work with you for all the 11 years you've been in Dorset. I hope you enjoy your time in New Zealand, and I look forward to seeing you back in Dorchester in 5 years' time. Now, I would like to call on group leaders to express their views. Nick?
I will stand. Hope you can hear me. I asked my favourite AI engine, what Matt Prosser's significant impact has been on Dorset. It gives 10 things. I'm not going to read them out in total in all the bump it gave, but I'll just list them off, and many of them will resonate with you. So ChatGPT thinks formation of Dorset Council, successful. Financial savings, Ofsted rating, energy efficiency, recycling, COVID-19 and cost of living support, recycling, again, support for Ukrainian refugees, levelling up funding, families first for children, Pathfinder and homelessness reduction. I think we can all agree they were great achievements, and Matt led the team that achieved those things. On a personal note, I would like to thank Matt for his support in the run-up to the elections last year, in which it enabled our new Liberal Democratic administration to hit the ground running. But most of all, as leader of Dorset Council since May, I'd really like to thank Matt for his support, in that I've always known you've got my back. I've always known that you'll be there when I need you, and the advice when I've asked for it has been sound and solid. And for that, I'm very, very grateful. I'll leave it to others to expand more. I've only been leader for the last year, but I think it's fair to say that Matt Prosser has left a legacy for Dorset, and on behalf of the Lib Dem administration, I would like to thank Matt for his work and wish you and Cheryl as well in the next stage of your venture, and I'm sure it'll be very successful.
I could call on Councillor Parry.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Andrew Parry, West Parley Ward. Depending on how you heard the news that Matt was going to leave us will depend on your reaction. And I was told this by a colleague, you'll never guess what, Matt's going to Wellington. Now, I have nothing against the market town and Somerset, but I found it difficult to imagine that our chief executive was going to move to there to become the parish clerk. I'm very pleased that when I later learnt that he was, of course, moving to Wellington, New Zealand. And I reflected, as others have done, on Matt's period of time in Dorset. He did, of course, arrive at the district councils and had to embrace and develop the partnership agreements between those tri-councils. That, of course, then evolved into what we knew to be LGR, local government reorganisation that led to Dorset Council as we know it today. And we'd factored in that there would be transformation, and we also knew there would be disaggregation, because, of course, Christchurch would be leaving the county framework. What none of us were quite prepared for, of course, though, was the pandemic and the lockdown restrictions that followed. And Matt's calmness and commitment was beyond reproach during those times, and they were some very dark days of worry for all of us. But even in the darkest of times, there are moments of light, and for me, it was probably our online meetings. And I'll share this with you now, if I may, because when you meet Matt in the office and you're there for a period of time, eventually one of the PA teams arrive to inform you that Matt's got another meeting due in 5 minutes, which is your cue to pack up and go. But you can't do that when you're talking to Matt in his kitchen, unless Pippa the Labrador starts throwing her food bowl around, at which point you do get the cue that it is time indeed to wrap the meeting up. On a personal level, I will, of course, miss our informal conversations, ranging from Triumph motorcycles to our family's joint connection through a parish called Longstock in the Hampshire countryside. I wish you well, and of course your wife and your wider family, who I know will have a change coming in your move to New Zealand. But on behalf of the Conservative Group, thank you for our time and as our Chief Executive when we were the administration, and for your help and support for us in our role in opposition. Our very best wishes to you. Thank you.
I'll go on Councillor Sutton.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Claire Sutton, Rodwell and Wyke Ward in Weymouth. Well, Matt, having quizzed a number of my friends who've worked with you formerly, I have 0 embarrassing anecdotes to tell about you, which is quite annoying. And I've also not got the faintest idea how you'd vote in a general election, which is also a little bit annoying. But both testify to the professionalism with which you have served Dorset, and that's for which we wholeheartedly thank you. On behalf of my group, I very much hope you and Cheryl enjoy your new venture and that you'll embrace the small G green in you. I understand that both Wellington's mayor and her deputy are of a green persuasion. On anecdotes, with my former C-Link announcer hat on, I think you'll understand why I say, bon voyage et tu vas nous manquer.
Councillor Hughes.
Councillor Rob Hughes, Ward Member for the Island Royal Manor of Portland, Dorset, the jewel in the crown of Dorset. Good evening, Chair, fellow members, officers of the Council. Councillor Les Fry, who cannot be here this evening, has asked me to take this opportunity on behalf of the independents of Dorset to say farewell to our Chief Executive, Matt Prosser. I understand from Les that he and Matt had dealings on various projects long before Les was ever elected to the council during his days as a police inspector for Dorset Police. And they have built up a solid friendship over the years. So Les says, thank you. And from myself, it has been a privilege to have known Matt since his days at Weymouth and Portland Council, when I was still new to the ways of being a councillor on Portland Town Council. Thanks for your support you gave and have given over all the years to us all. Matt is well respected by all who know him, and many have had good things to say about him tonight at this, his last full council meeting, no matter how long or short a time they may have known him. Matt has served Dorset well in his roles within Dorset Councils for over a decade now, and from his early days in Weymouth and Portland Borough Council to where we are, from Weymouth and Portland Borough Council to where we are tonight as members of the Dorset Unitary Council. Matt has always supported the teams and officers under his direction and control, as well as the leaders and members of the council. He has certainly set the bar high for his replacement. We will miss Matt's experience and knowledge as we go forward. I'm sure you'll all agree. The new world will soon have a new chief executive from this old country, learning new ways of doing a capital job for its 440,000 plus population of Wellington. Wellington is New Zealand's capital city and is situated on the coast at the southern end of the North Island. The people of Wellington, I'm told, refer to themselves as wellies, and I hope you have a good pair of wellies to take with you for the journey. If not, I'm sure we'll all chip in and buy you a pair to make it for your first day in the office wearing your wellies and in New Zealand. And if you remember, some of you, it was Billy Connolly who sang, "If it wasn't for your wellies, where would you be?" A great song and still funny today and worth a listen as you travel. I'm sure as Matt is settling into his new role on the other side of the world, he will be watching and listening to how things are going back in the UK, I'm sure. And I'm sure that there are members amongst us who wish that they were also heading off to distant shores and joining him. Matt, quite simply, Dorset says a big thank you, and we all wish you the best for your new life in the world down under. Have fun and enjoy it to the max.
Councillor Weller.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I haven't written anything because I knew that everybody would say everything before it got to me. However, along with one or two in the chamber, I'm looking at Councillor Taylor, we are responsible for Matt being here in the first place because we were the interview panel that appointed him to Chief Executive of the partnership when it was Weymouth and Portland and West Dorset, and I think there are some West Dorset members here as well. And I think we made a good choice. I was pleased. I liked your socks at that time, I seem to remember. Not the ideal way to choose a chief executive, but it worked out. So look at the socks for the future, a future tip. You've all said how professional Matt has always been, how supportive he's always been, and I think we can all endorse that. I've certainly found that the case. Matt joined the partnership in the year that I was mayor of Weymouth and Portland. So he and I had a very close association during that time. Quite a bit of fun, quite a bit of, oh, what do we do now? Because, of course, he didn't know. He was new, and I was looking for advice, and it was, well, wing it. Good advice, I think. As you all know, I do wing it. I suspect you're not winging it when you go to New Zealand. You will have done an awful lot of research beforehand, and you know exactly what to expect. It's going to be a huge adventure. I know you'll enjoy it. Your family are going to enjoy it. So I personally wish you a huge amount of luck. You've been a good friend to me. You were very supportive when I was ill and last year. So thank you very much. I wish you all the very best. Thank you very much.
Right, your turn, Matt.
Green light, red light, I can speak. Chair of Council, all members, it has been a huge privilege to be the first Chief Executive of Dorset Council. And having now spent over a decade in Dorset of Chief Executive post 2 and then 3 councillors, I mean to say it has been a privilege working with all of you as councillors and those who came before you, but also to work with so many amazing and talented colleagues, both past and present, to serve the residents of Dorset, who are the reason that we do what we do, for those that understand that and those that don't. Much has changed in the last decade, and there were many changes that will be coming for local government nationally in the coming months, as we know, and years with local government's devolution white paper, including LGR, Local Government Reorganisation, which is a journey we've been on in Dorset. And in that respect, we're ahead of the curve because we've done it. And I think that's a theme for me, as I believe when I leave Dorset, it's in a better place than when I arrived, as we work collectively to change structures, governance and practice, modernising, transforming and investing in the services we deliver to the people for whom we have a duty in Dorset. From our role as corporate parents to supporting the local economy, enhancing our digital offer and connectivity, the public health of our residents to ensuring residents can age well in the most beautiful part of the world. And that most significant challenge that we all face of protecting our climate, our ecology and nature for current and future generations, as well as delivering services that are just business as usual, all of which I'm hugely proud of. Dorset has a national reputation for the service it delivers, and we're not perfect, but we are continually working on it. I have, and I am, and I will continue to, maybe in 5 years' time, enjoying working in Dorset. Maybe I won't be working in Dorset, maybe just living in Dorset. But sometimes an opportunity that comes calling, it looks like worth pursuing. And it was humbling when the capital city of New Zealand approached me as part of their executive search for a new CEO. This combined with the fact that my wife and I have always wanted to spend time living in New Zealand ever since we were married over 32 years ago. If there was therefore a door worth having a look at, it was this. And there is, after all, much in common between Dorset and Wellington, from coastal communities, ports and harbours, fabulous heritage, countryside, locations for blockbuster movies. I could go on, although their mountains are slightly bigger than ours, as I found out. Little did I know that I would be offered this opportunity. However, I was drawn to the values of the City Council, which I believe are very much in line with my own personal values and Dorset's. The key one being, and forgive me for those who have Te Reo Maori in their lexicon, and it's one of the personal journeys I'll be going on as I have to learn Te Reo, is hi aha, ti mea, nui o te ao. Hi tangata, hi tangata, hi tangata. What is the most important thing in the world? It's the people. It's the people. It's the people. Ngā mihi. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Dorset.
As a small memento of your time in Dorset, I'll give you the glass. Thank you. And now we'll move on with the agenda. Item 3 is public participation questions. We have 2 questions. The first one is online from Mr. Thomas. Hope you're there, Mr. Thomas.
Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me? Hello? Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Mr. Thomas, we can't hear you. Are you able to turn your sound up, please?
How do I do that? Hang on. Can you hear me?
We can, but can you be a bit louder, maybe? You're quite quiet.
I'll try and shout. I'm as near as I can. Is that better? Can you hear me?
I'm very sorry, Mr. Thomas, but you're not loud enough. We can barely hear you.
I don't know what I can do to increase the sound. Let's see, maybe that. Is that better?
Could I suggest someone could read the question for you, Mr. Thomas?
Is that better? Can you hear me now?
Perhaps one of our clerks could read the question.
Mr. Thomas, we will read it out on your behalf.
Can you not hear me then?
No, I'm very sorry. No, we are very, very faint.
Okay. All right. I was going to say good evening and kia ora to Matt Prosser, but my question is to Councillor Nick Arden, Leader of the Council.
Okay, we're going to have the question read out because unfortunately we can't hear you.
Okay, so this is the question submitted by Mr. Richard Thomas, Chair of Sustainable Shaftesbury Advisory Committee to Shaftesbury Town Council and member of Dorset Climate Action Network. A previous Dorset Council unanimously agreed to note that the proposal for a Dorset National Park and the evidence for it, and to keep it under review, stating that the proposal for a national park could potentially support Dorset Council's corporate outcomes in relation to a healthy and prosperous Dorset. In recent years, the Dorset National Park Team Community Interest Company, CIC, has further developed a strong and well-evidenced case for an extended Dorset National and Marine Park, which would be England's first to coordinate action across the joined-up ecosystems of land, coast and sea. The DMP team has stated it would like to work in close partnership with Dorset Council and local communities to help address the climate and nature emergencies, care for and improve the environment, people's health and well-being, and benefit our communities, environment and economy throughout Dorset. Following the DMP team's submission to Natural England and to the government appointed a Glover review of designated landscapes, whose 2019 report recommended that Dorset be seriously considered for national park status. Will the new administration confirm its commitment to supporting the creation of Dorset as Britain's first combined land and sea national park, in the full knowledge that the proposal has the cross-party support of many town and parish councils throughout Dorset, as well as Dorset CPRE, Dorset Wildlife Trust, and most other environmental and nature conservation charities and organisations in Dorset? And will it also now press the new government for an early decision on the creation of such an exciting and pioneering entity in Dorset?
Thank you for the question, Mr Thomas. Councillor Ireland will respond to you.
Thank you, Chair. I apologise to Mr Thomas that we couldn't hear him in the chamber. So Councillor Nick Ireland, Crossways Ward. Dorset Council is committed to conserving and enhancing landscape and scenic beauty within our national landscapes, as well as the outstanding universal value of our Jurassic Coast and World Heritage Site. We are also actively working to promote nature recovery and to address the climate and ecological emergency through our plans, programmes and well-established partnerships, which stretch across many organisations and community groups. This includes engaging with the Marine Management Organisation on addressing local marine nature recovery. This council has set out its strategic priorities, and will continue to engage in initiatives with these demonstrably add value in helping us to deliver better outcomes for Dorset and its communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Thomas. The next question is from Mr Bailey, who is here.
That one, excellent. So good evening all. My name is Alex Bailey. I'm a resident of Weymouth. My question is for Councillor Simon Clifford, the Cabinet Member for Finance and Capital Strategy. For the first time, Dorset Council's budget will be hitting a record £416 million, nearly £1.2 million a day. I could dwell on the penny pinching of the new evening parking charges, despite election promises to reduce costs. Instead, let's focus on where our money is really going, from the pennies to the pounds, and then the big ticket item. Monthly, Dorset Council spends tens of thousands of pounds on agency staff, yet smaller sums are just as eyebrow-raising. £300,000 was handed to Activist Group Limited in December 2024 for a, quote, director's office, reminiscent of a Boris-like Downing Street refurb. In July, £51,000 went to Care Dorset Limited for fireworks, oddly categorised as health and safety, supposedly a lavish show at the taxpayer's expense. Jokes aside, I assume that was for fire safety equipment, but you wouldn't be needing that if the beds were rented. And I'll go into that later. In April and August, University Hospitals Dorset got £72,000 for, quote, smoking and tobacco, with very little explanation. One can only hope this isn't funding smoking breaks. In June, the council forked out £400,000 to Beryl Bikes, who supplied 121 E-bikes only for the firm to pull out partly this month from Dorset. October saw £840,000 spent on snow management by a company called AB Schmidt UK Limited. Despite just a light dusting of January snow, gritters were out at 8:30 last Wednesday in 7-degree weather. Wouldn't expanding contracts with local farmers have been more practical for a solution? Then in September, Newton Consulting Limited bagged $400,000 for adult social care consultancy, adding to the £14.5 million already spent yearly, nearly 3% of that budget. There's much more to scrutinise. The big ticket item is Care Dorset Limited, with 6 highly paid directors, costing around £2.3 million per month, alongside agency staff spending. Wouldn't it be more cost-effective to contract private care homes per bed rather than run services in-house, avoiding costs like pensions, HR, administration, and the overheads of owning 6 properties? The Guardian even notes 84% of care homes in England are privately owned, highlighting the sector's...
Mr Bailey, you've had your 3 minutes. Have we had the question yet?
To my question. Oh, sorry there. Thank you. To my question, nearly £340,000 has been spent over 9 months on internal audits with South West Audit Partnership Limited. While internal audits serve a purpose, they are ultimately conducted by an organisation working closely with the Council. Will the Cabinet commit to commissioning an independent external financial audit to effectively address wasteful and unnecessary spending? Such an audit would be fully transparent to the public, going beyond a routine review of the figures to scrutinise the justification behind spending decisions. It would ask why certain expenditures were made, whether they would deliver genuine value for money, and how future financial decisions can be more accountable. A truly independent review would help build public trust and ensure that every penny is spent wisely. Thank you for your time, everyone.
Councillor Clifford will reply.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks for the question. And for your commitment in monitoring council finances, which is a smidgen of the finances, but still it's important. So I'm grateful that you take the time. As a council is spending public money, it's crucial we all play a part in ensuring funds are used appropriately and achieve value for money, which I think is the nub of the point you're getting at. So if I could first give you a direct answer to your question, and then I do want to come back and reflect on some of the points you've raised. So you've asked about an independent review of council finances. I can confirm the council already appoints external finance auditors, Grant Thornton, to undertake an external audit. This includes a full audit of the council statement of accounts and also reports on the council's arrangements for value for money. Grant Thornton are scheduled to present their findings later this month, including a value for money declaration, at the Audit and Governance Committee on the 24th of February, which is a couple of weeks' time. I would encourage you to review the documents once they're published and perhaps even tune into that meeting. It'll be riveting. I do have to come back to a couple of the points you've raised in your interpretation of the spend, which in some places is inaccurate. The 6 directors for Care Dorset are not highly paid directors. They're non-executive directors on a relatively small honorarium. The £840,000 to AB Schmidt was not for gritting, as you misinterpreted, but as part of our ongoing vehicle replacement process, as in they are buying gritters. That's what the money was for. I would also remind you that gritters are deployed before the weather goes below 0 in order to be preventative, which is why sometimes you'll see them out when the weather might be warm, but the forecast is for much colder weather to come. The payments to University Hospital Dorset to refer to smoking and tobacco are not to fund smoking breaks, as I'm sure you knew. Their payment is for a smoking cessation programme. And finally, as I think you've discovered, the £51,000 payment to Care Dorset for what you call a lavish fireworks show at taxpayers' expense, as described in the report, is for fireworks, not fireworks. It relates to payments for fire wardens. It relates to payments for fire wardens to keep our care homes safe. That's why it's categorised as health and safety. It is easy to misread these things. I do have sympathy with you. I'm very happy to meet up with you at a time of your convenience and go through some of the other points you've raised. I would also say it's £417 million, not 416. And because you got that wrong, you're buying.
Thank you for your question, Mr. Bailey. Now we move on to item 6. There are no petitions or deputations. Item 7, the leader of the council will give us some announcements.
Thank you, Councillor Nick Ireland, Crossways Ward. I'm just going to touch on 3 points. I do welcome questions, but try keep them brief. If possible, it's going to be a long night. The first thing I'm going to talk about briefly is the fact that, obviously, we know Matt is leaving for Pastures New. We started the recruitment process for a new chief executive pretty much immediately. We made the decision at the time, and I still think it's the right one so far, to run the process in-house. It's going to save us around £50,000. We will be engaging in terms of technical interviews with external facilitators to help in that regard, but the cost is minimal in the scheme of things. It's progressing well. We've had a huge amount of interest. I've spoken to 15 prospective candidates so far. There's been a lot more. There are a lot more completed applications than that. The team are filtering out, the ones I should speak to, let's put it that way. And the ones I've spoken to, many of them have got many great skills and may end up on the shortlist, who knows. We've got some stuff on the agenda later, in specifically the staffing committee, which I'll talk about later when I introduce that paper, and also a paper about the returning officer, which is also related to Matt leaving. I'll talk about that at that point as well. Devolution, I could use different words to describe my emotions about not being on the priority programme. I'll just say disappointing. I'll leave it as that. We've put a lot of effort in, not just since Angela Rayner sent us a letter in July after they won the general election. My predecessor, Councillor Flower, was involved in discussions with Wiltshire, Somerset, BCP, North Somerset and Swindon. And it felt right that when we were instructed by Angela Rayner to basically make an expression of interest, and by the way, you do need to, we would take those things forward. And we engaged a lot. We had lots and lots of meetings. It's not just leaders, it was chief execs were in the room, and many officers, and they put a huge amount of work into it. I won't go through the rest of the process, but we ended up putting a proposal in, asking to be on the priority programme in January the 10th, after meeting Baroness Taylor in MHCLG in London. We came away fairly confident that we'd be on the programme, I think, looking at Matt, but I think we were assured by her words. We were assured that the fact that BCP hadn't actually made a decision at that point wasn't a problem, and they could make a decision several days after the deadline, which they did in favour of Wessex. And yet, I've used this phrase before, we didn't go down this process willingly. We went down this process because the outcome was essentially prescribed. None of us think it's true devolution, but we recognise the fact that the government are saying there is only one direction. They have said they need to fill in the map. And there are benefits, the money. So that was the carrot, and we ended up with no vegetables in the end. We had no clear response, basically, of why we weren't on the programme. We were given, let's call it bump at the beginning of the meeting, about geography, about commitment, but when pressed, all those points were basically retracted. We came away from the meeting essentially thinking it was down to funding and capacity within MHCLG. We will find out later. We will be engaging with government, but we will need clear assurances from government that we're not going to waste officer resource and our own time going forward to be rejected again. The earliest we can be on a programme would be elections in September 27. We have a meeting tomorrow of leaders and chief execs at which we'll discuss how we're going to go forward. I won't go into that right now. It's for another meeting, I suspect. But we are challenging the government on what they're going to do to fill the void. Rachel Reeves has essentially given the South West nothing so far. We've got Heathrow Terminal 3, Runway 3, we've got Oxford and Cambridge, Silicon Valley, all that sort of stuff. She hasn't announced anything for Dorset or the wider South West Peninsula. The devolution programme doesn't recognise the South West Peninsula, and yet at the same time, they're proposing to remove funding for pan-regional partnerships. For the one that covers ours, it's Great South West, which does a great job of pushing us forward in terms of our offer for food security, our defence industries, our capacity to provide green energy and green jobs and the marine tech and marine economy. They've all fallen by the wayside, and they've shown no sign at all of investing in the Southwest. So one of the things we are pushing for, and will be in our letter to Angela Rayner when we express our disappointment, we will finally write to her, will be, what are you going to do to fill in the gap before the benefits that you say devolution will bring will actually hit Dorset? I'll probably leave it there. I would just like to thank, in particular, Stephen Ford and Rachel Anderson-Holson, who the two officers who've led on this. They've put a huge amount of work in. They're putting a huge amount of work, since we were told last week. They're talking to MHCLG, they're talking to the growth unit, they're talking to officers in the other councils. So it's not dead. They're saying we need to go down this route, and until they say we're not going to have to go down the route, we will pursue that process. And finally, Whereham level crossing. Some of us in the room have been around it long enough, some longer than others, to remember this issue. And I sat on the planning committee for Dorset County Council when we rejected one of the ramp options. I think it's fair to say that the vast majority of the Whereham population don't believe a ramp solution is possible, and don't wish one either. We as a council, I think, recognise that a ramp is basically impossible to build, that satisfies needs without being stupidly steep. A lift solution is not really an option either. I attended a demonstration just to watch a couple of Saturdays ago, along with the local ward members. I think Councillor Tripe was there as well. I think I saw you in the audience. Vicky Slade MP addressed it. Edward Fox, the actor, addressed, and some members of the town, in terms of the town council, etc. It was a huge turnout of all ages. Nobody thinks we need a solution because the solution is already there. It's walking across the level crossing. It works. We need to keep it. Of course, there's a potentially 2038, as some of you will know, Network Rail or wherever the perceived, Network Rail are going away this year. Somebody's going to replace them. They potentially can close the crossing in 2038. All we can do as a council, and I will make a commitment now publicly, that in this current administration, as long as the Lib Dems are in power, until 2029, I hope, we will not impose any solution that involves ramps or lifts. We will not engage in conversations or negotiations with anybody that proposes a solution which involves those things. We'll only engage in a conversation that has a solution which maintains street access without any lifts, ramps, or any other paraphernalia across that crossing, because it's the right thing to do. And it's not Dorset Council's responsibility to enable Network Rail to close the crossing. And so we will fight it. We'll keep it open as much as we can. That's all I can promise. In the end, it's not our role to keep it open. We want to keep it open, but in the end, somebody can close it, Network Rail. We don't think they can close it till 2038. If they close it, there will have to be an EQI, inequalities inspection, which I suspect will mean it goes to government, and they'll probably reject it. I would like to think so. But we will not waste Dorset Council taxpayers' money on chasing something that the residents of Whereham don't need. That's all I'll say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ireland. Can I just say that if Wareham don't want a lift at the station, Dorchester would love one. Anyone like to ask questions? Councillor Holloway.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm grateful for the leader for making that commitment in public, because as he knows, obviously attending that demonstration in Wareham, the motives and obviously issues on this are very high, and it's often something that both myself and Councillor Rezard, we hear very much in the local community. So it is a very important, vital link. It is to Wareham, and it is vital that we do maintain it. So I am grateful that the leader has made that commitment of obviously maintaining that existing crossing for the time being. What I just will ask is that will he ask that he pass these views on to our local MP to make sure that she is clear of the Dorset Council's views before she has her meeting with the Minister of State for Rail, which I believe is going to be later this month. So would he make that clear to our local MP on that, please?
Councillor Ireland.
Yes, I will.
Councillor Parry.
Not Macy Clark first.
Sorry. Councillor Lacey-Clark first.
Thank you, Chairman, and Nick, thank you for your report and summary. Obviously, we've spent quite a large number of resources on looking into devolution. Yeah, and that was both the previous administration and this one and continuing. It was very much the feeling that I got in the room that we did not pursue devolution because we wanted it. We were pursuing devolution because we thought we needed to, as that's the way the world was going. We've now been given an opportunity where we've actually been told, you've applied, but no thank you. So actually, I see no point in us rushing to get in the second trench or third trench. We actually have an opportunity now to sit back and say, well, we did apply. Let's see how it works in the other areas that are having this new deal forced upon them, opportunity given to them. And we can then actually look and see, is this something we are willing to go to, or do we actually want to fight this as much as we can? And I'm looking now to see if you will commit to, in a year or two's time, so we don't need to do it straight away, having an actual open forum with any councillor that wishes to be part of it, to come and actually discuss the merits before it's brought back into full council, before we waste any more of our resources in pursuing something we don't actually want to do.
Councillor Ireland.
I can't fully commit to that because we're a partnership in the Wessex deal. We need to discuss, and we are talking about this tomorrow. All I would say is our view is that we've done everything we can, and our deal was sound. It was rejected for reasons that we haven't been told. We think it's financial. We think it's capacity. You know, I personally am not in a rush to engage with government. You know, there's lots of other things we can be doing for our residents. And so, you know, going forward, we've done the work, as far as I'm concerned. You know, until the government say we haven't. You know, Swindon is an issue, I suspect. We haven't been told that. You know, Swindon are going to have to decide what they're going to do. And to be honest, I'm not that worried about what they do. I'm not going to go and pursue Swindon and start begging at their door to say join Wessex, because they've said before they don't want to, and so I'm quite happy to leave it as that. But I can't commit that if we're invited to be in the priority programme for 27, we'll engage again with members and talk about it, and probably try to get ratification. The intention was, if we were on the priority programme, we would potentially, if we knew early enough, we'd have had a paper on this council tonight to confirm that members across the chamber wish to carry it on. Because we would have to be involved in an additional process going forward, and we will do that again. So if we were told we are on a priority programme, but suddenly say you're up, we will come back to the chamber just to confirm that we want to pursue that before we have a final decision to actually join.
Okay, now Councillor Parry.
Thank you, Chair. I think we all sense the palpable frustration from the leader on this matter, and I don't take that as a slight at him at all. I know he put great passion and time and effort into it. In fact, he made a point of going to visit a number of town and parishes, or particularly the town councils, and it must have been an interesting experience talking to town mayors about having to deliver a regional mayor. Would you like to give us a sense of whether you felt there was a welcoming from those town councils, that we see a regional mayor sit above Dorset Council and dictate to our residents on that basis the delivery of services across the county?
Councillor Ireland.
So thank you for Councillor Perry for mentioning my commitment to visit every single town council in Dorset Council's area. I'm through a few. I have my favourites, and I have my. I won't go into it, and maybe my answer might be different depending on who's asking the question. Generally, I found that once you explain what devolution is, and I've been honest, it's not something politically I would want to do unless we're forced to do it. People pretty much get it. It's not taking away services from Dorset Council. Labour say, and you have to believe it until they say otherwise. And the white paper is out there. It will become legislation, I suspect, maybe with a few amendments by the end of the year. It doesn't take away our sovereignty, basically. The four councils will still exist. There will be an elected person above that. It will have a precept. And I've been honest about that. They will have a precept. Your council tax will go up. It probably won't go up by very much. I don't know the figures for areas around the country. You can tell I made a mistake when I was answering the question to Mr. Thomas. The phrase I was meant to say was strategic priorities. I actually said strategic authorities, which shows you how embedded it is in my head. it's not taking away sovereignty. The powers are prescribed in the white paper. It says what they'll deliver. It doesn't say how much money you're going to get, to be fair. And Councillor Lacey-Clark is right. Maybe we'll see. One of the issues we have, though, is that people on the priority programme, apart from one, possibly two, are actually not going to have a strategic authority from day one. They'll have elections in May 26, but that will elect a shadow authority because they also need to go through the LGR process. So Hampshire, Essex, Sussex, Surrey, Suffolk, sorry, I should say. Is it Suffolk? Sorry, anyway. They've all got boroughs and districts. Those boroughs and districts are going to go. That wasn't in the Labour manifesto. That's causing a huge angst across the country, across all political colours, including Labour, it has to be said. But it's going to happen, I suspect. But the reality in those places, they'll have a strategic authority. They'll have a mayor elected in 2026, but they'll have nothing to run because LGR needs to happen. And we know how long LGR took in Dorset. You look in 2 to 3 years. So the elections which have been cancelled, which is dangerous for democracy, I would argue. There were cancelled elections in all those areas for boroughs, districts, counties, and they're unlikely to happen until 2028 at the very earliest, and maybe line up with the general election 2029. So it's not great for democracy, but it's what's happening.
Any more questions for the leader? Councillor Kimber.
Thank you, Chair. Nobody was more disappointed than myself when our bid did not actually reach. And I wrote to my colleagues, the MP, about this and why it should be supported. And I believe everybody did as much as they could do. I'm a bit saddened to hear you say more or less you'll wash your hands of it until possibly the next round comes in. I'm not sure how many areas were in our shoes that were had as much disappointment as we that this isn't going forward. This, particularly with finance for ourselves, is, for me, it was bitterly disappointing only because of the money, this new money this might have brought in. Thank you.
Councillor Ireland.
Thank you, Councillor Kimber. I don't think I said we'd wash our hands of it. I think what I said is alluded to. We've done most of the work. We have officers who talk to central government regularly. That's their job. They talk to the growth unit. They talk to MHCLG. They talk to other departments. Those conversations, if devolution comes up, they'll engage in those conversations. But we're not going to put a huge amount of effort in because we don't think we need to. We haven't been told what we've done wrong, and we don't think we have. So I don't envisage it's going to cost a huge amount of money. It's not. It's essentially our officers doing their jobs. In terms of finances, that's the reason we were going into the pursuing it. If you're going to be forced to do something, get the benefits early. There is also an argument. Look at what happened, but in the end, there is only one path. Until Labour change their mind, they're going to fill in the map of strategic authorities. And if you don't want to join, if the white paper goes through and becomes law, which it inevitably will do, they will be allowed to force somebody to join. They'll tell you where you need to go. So that's the reality. Some of the devolution priority programmes that are going forward, you could argue are going forward for debt reasons. Surrey is the prime example. The leader of Surrey County Council at the County Council Network Leaders meeting last Friday said so himself. The only reason Surrey is going forward is because of the debt of, is it Woking Borough Council? They've got 2 billion debt. They could never pay it off in a million years. The government are probably going to have to write that off because you can't do LGR with somebody carrying that debt. And you could possibly look at Hampshire and other places, and it's probably the same reason. So they're prioritising, and we're not a priority. And to echo Councillor Flower previously, central government have not a priority for any party of any colour. I think it's fair to say, and that's the reality of life. And we just need to keep banging the drum. And it's why, especially disappointing, why Great South West is disappearing. They haven't made the announcement yet. Likely to make it this week. I suspect they're going to defund them. So we really need to work out a way of getting to Keir Starmer, Angela Rayner, Rachel Reeves, and making the case for Dorset and the wider region, because we can offer something to the country.
Councillor Bryan.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. I've got to show my support for what the leader has said on this. I think it's very important that we get some answers. I warn him that under my watch, we entered a £130 million bid for BSIP. To my knowledge, and I'll look round at Jack on this, we've never received any reasons as to why we didn't get it. So I wish you all the best going forward, but thank you for your openness tonight.
Any more questions for the leader? Thank you. Then we'll move on to item 8, questions from councillors. And these questions will be timed for 2 minutes, okay? The first one is Councillor Lugg.
The A348 Ringwood Road runs through Longham, the centre of Ferndown, and onto Trickett's Cross, where it joins the A31. Residents constantly complain about the large number of HGVs travelling through the centre of town, many coming from the Port of Poole and going on to other routes up country. After years of trying last year, Councillor Parks and I persuaded Dorset Council to reduce the speed on this road to 30 miles an hour, thanks to Councillor Ray Bryan and the Transforming Cities Fund team. A resident who lives along Ringwood Road at Longham tells me this has had some impact on HGV traffic, as it no longer shows the fastest route during busy times. When the A31 bypass was built, the opportunity to direct traffic away from Ferndown Town Centre was missed. More recently, Dorset Let funded an upgrade to Gravel Hill, which was again meant to address the issue. Again, Ferndown were let down. As well as travelling through the town centre, traffic has to negotiate Longham Bridge, which is a Grade 2 listed bridge. This bridge is unsuitable for HGVs, as only one can traverse the bridge at a time, and there have been collisions, vehicles stuck, and frequent damage to the bridge. It needs a weight restriction, but as an A road, this isn't possible. I believe that Councillor Bryan, when he was Cabinet Member for Highways, had conversations with Highways England about downgrading the A348 to a B road to facilitate a weight restriction. Will Dorset Council commit to working with National Highways to make this a reality?
Thank you. Councillor Andrews will reply.
Thank you very much, Cathy, for the question. Totally understand. Been down there a few times myself and seen the issues on Longham Bridge. The current arrangement is that freight traffic travelling to the Port of Poole is signed along the A349 Gravel Hill, and traffic leaving the port is signed along the A348 Ringwood Road. Any change to this arrangement would require a joint agreement with National Highways and BCP Council to sign all port-related traffic along the A31 and A349, rather than the A348. A lot of A numbers there, sorry. However, not all freight traffic is going to the port, and there are other significant industrial estates in the north of Poole and Bournemouth area that are more easily accessed by the A348. With a limited number of river crossings and associated primary routes to and from BCP area, the impact of any new weight limit on one corridor on the others must be carefully considered. While we have no intention of downgrading the route at the current time, we will continue to work to deliver highway improvement schemes on the Ringwood Road and through Ferndown Town Centre that will reduce the vehicle speeds, improve the public realm, and dissuade HGVs from using the A348 in future. We are also investigating that minor improvements could be made to the approach to Longham Bridge to help reduce bridge strikes. I will ask officers to advance discussions with National Highways and BCP regarding changing the signage, freight route, and report back to me.
Councillor Lugg, do you have a supplementary question? Thank you. Now we move on to Councillor Parks.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As local ward councillors, Cathy Lugg and I would like to fully understand what Dorset Council's intentions are for Victoria Road in Ferndown. Following our ward member work with the excellent team from Litter Free Dorset, we welcome the funds that have been made available to make improvements in regard to seating and planters adjacent to the library, which has acted as a catalyst for the Town Council to fund the removal of all the trees and replace street furniture in the road. Many shopkeepers and local residents have asked us why the planters and trees have been removed when no consideration is being given to the issues of public parking on the pavements, as on-street parking was very much a fundamental part to any regeneration of the street scene. Without planters, we are now left with a lifeless concrete scene, which, given the wider pavements, is exasperating the inappropriate parking issues. When Dorset Council publicly committed to regeneration project in early 24, officers were actively seeking pots of money they believed could fund the much needed improvements, and we are saddened this activity has ceased to the detriment of our residents. However, we understand the Town Council has been promised £89,000 as part of the Capital Leverage Fund to carry out works on Victoria Road, which we welcome, although it seems strange that Dorset Council would give money to the Town Council to carry out work on Dorset Council land rather than retaining it itself. We understand that Dorset Council officers have now been tasked with designing the new streetscape, and we would like to know what timescales for design and implementation and how this is going to be funded by Dorset Council. We'd also like to understand when we will be involved as ward members in this project, which we were previously leading on at a local level rather than finding out through third parties, as currently the situation. It seems for some inexplicable reason we are currently being excluded from something that sits in the heart of our ward and that we have both been actively campaigning for about the last 10 years. Ferndown Town Centre not only serves the residents of the largest inland town in Dorset, but also is used regularly by surrounding communities of West Parley, Westmoor.
Thank you. Your time has come. We haven't asked a question. Can you ask a question quickly?
The question was contained in that.
That was a question.
Thank you, Councillor Clark, for the question. Be still on. Right, okay. Thank you, Councillor Parks, for your question. All the trees in Victoria Road were subject to a full tree survey. This confirmed that the health of all the trees was deteriorating and they would all need to be removed within the short to medium term. In addition, all the planters which contained the trees were health and safety risks. As a result of these two facts, it was decided that the safest and most cost-effective decision was to remove all the trees and planters immediately. Dorset Council are currently working with Ferndown Town Council on producing a variety of options for Victoria Road. These will be fully costed and will take account of the current pavement parking. The two councils will work together to identify an appropriate and suitable budget for the work. As soon as the plans are available, there will be a consultation exercise with residents and business owners. Design and delivery is being managed by the strategic projects team within the highways improvements. Their work being funded by the local transport plan. The design team was briefed late in January 25 and are developing the project plan. They intend to contact the Town Council and ward members for detailed scoping discussions to establish aspirations for each area, such as holding Christmas markets. This more detailed scoping discussion will help to ensure the proposals meet and accommodate these aspirations. The project programme is in development and is not possible to give an implementation date at this stage. However, the team will undertake the detailed scoping discussions late in February. The team, in consultation with local members, will approach the Ferndown Town Council in late March to discuss and refine emerging options. It's expected that the feasibility design options will be ready for further public engagement in May 25, which is to be led by Ferndown Town Council. This is a joint project between Ferndown Town Council and Dorset Council. The infrastructure going in will be owned and managed by Ferndown Town Council and not Dorset Council. Therefore, it is important that Ferndown Town Council take a leading role in this and involve the Dorset Council councillors. The design team will contact the ward member for more detailed scoping discussions. Joseph Rose also informed Councillor that this team were looking at the project on the 31st of January. Thank you.
You have a supplementary on that one.
Yeah, if I may, Madam Chairman, you haven't answered the part where I was asking about the fact that officers were previously looking for funds to fund the regeneration in Ferndown, and I do have emails to prove that was the case if anyone wants to deny that.
Councillor Andrews?
Sorry, Chair, I didn't hear a question in that, but I will answer Councillor Park in due course after I've spoken to officers.
Councillor Parks, your second question.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. You'll be pleased to know this is a much shorter question. Whilst I appreciate there may be commercial sensitivities, please can I have an update on the sale of the former East Dorset District Council site at Firs Hill, which has been ongoing for over 5 years. Like most of the elected members in the East of Dorset, we would like to understand if this money will be ring-fenced for capital projects that would be of benefit to residents in the former local authority's geographical area, or whether we will see this money propping up the funding shortfalls in places such as Weymouth and Dorchester.
Councillor Biggs.
Yes, Richard Biggs, Property Assets and Economic Growth, Poundbury, Dorchester Ward, Matt's councillor, but not for much longer. He's obviously getting away as far as he possibly can. There seems to be two questions there, but I will let that go. So response is, following a marketing campaign in 2024, the council appointed a preferred bidder for the site. The bidder is proposing a residential development. Formal approval will be required from Dorset Council Cabinet to proceed with the transaction. Before seeking Cabinet approval and before the transaction can proceed, council officers are working with the preferred bidder to resolve a public right-of-way claim across the site to the satisfaction of the applicant and the prospective purchaser. And the other part of your question was simply capital receipts from property disposals are not ring-fenced for the benefit of specific geographical areas within the county. Good try.
Do you have a supplementary on that one? No, thank you. We'll then move on to Councillor Quayle.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, the Cabinet Member for Children's Services formally launched an investigation into the recent collapse of the Blandford Youth and Community Centre. This facility has been an integral part of the community, providing essential services and support to local youth and residents. The abrupt closure has caused significant concern among community members who are keen to understand the circumstances leading up to this decision. As one of the Blandford members, I ask that you investigate this matter thoroughly and to provide a detailed report on the reasons behind the closure, any contributing factors, and the steps being taken to address the situation, and how previous Dorset Council funding was used to support this organisation.
Councillor Sutton.
Claire Sutton, Cabinet Member, Children's Services, Education and Skills. Thank you for your question, Councillor Quayle. And I share the concern of the community members at the closure of the youth club delivered by Blandford Youth Centre Charity. The final decision to close the provision was taken by the trustees, excuse me, which is their right. As the centre was not run or managed by Dorset Council, it would not be appropriate for us to undertake an investigation. I know considerable efforts were made during the autumn to keep the club open, which you and Councillor Lacey Clark were involved in, along with the then service manager for children for Young and Thriving and the CEO of Dorset Youth Association, which is grant funded by the council to provide support and advice to VCS organisations. Several actions were considered, including how new trustees could be recruited, negotiation with the school about the building costs and whether the building could be used as a family hub, which under the DfE guidance was unfortunately not possible. I can also confirm that the Youth and Community Centre received grants from our Youth Fund in 2021, 22, 23 and 24. I absolutely recognise the impact that this will have on the Blandford community and will be meeting with trustees from the TREDS Youth Advice and Information Centre alongside officers from Children's Services and Dorset Youth Association on the 20th of February, and I understand that you'll be there too. This meeting will look to identify how we can work with community partners to mitigate the loss of the youth centre and ensure local young people have access to a trusted adult and a safe place to go. And I welcome your support and involvement in how we address these challenges. The Head of Commissioning for Family Help would also be very happy to meet with you to further discuss. Thank you.
Do you have a supplementary to that?
Yes, Chairman. The question I asked is, would you have a report into the closure published, an official report, because a lot of council funding has gone into this organisation, and there's a big question mark which I'll be taking up with the Charities Commission on some of the handling of this. I didn't hear if that would be the case.
Councillor Sitter.
Yeah, thank you, Byron. It may be that I bring in our corporate director for further information, but my immediate response is to that is that belongs with the Charities Commission as opposed to with Dorset Council. In terms of the funding, the final part of your question, in terms of the funding, I mean, as a lot of you will know, obviously Dorset Council actually directly ran all these youth clubs until 2016, when the then Conservative administration pulled the plug on all that. So whilst significant funding went into the youth centre from Dorset Council then, that has been far less significant in recent years, as I'm sure you're aware. As for a report into the closure, I'm not absolutely sure that looking backwards in this instance would really help. Not only do I actually not think that's Dorset Council's responsibility, I don't think looking backwards in this instance is really going to help us. I think that meeting on February the 20th, as well as the preparatory work going up towards that meeting on February the 20th, is really our opportunity and time to look forward rather than backward, and we'd be better putting our energy, time and resources into looking forward than reporting. But I don't know if the corporate director would like to add anything, or if you'd like her to try to further resolve any of those issues.
Thank you. Councillor Quayle, your second question.
Thank you, Chairman. And my second question is also something close to my heart. The Veteran-Friendly Framework is a collaboration initiative spearheaded by the Royal British Legion, Royal Star and Garter, and the Veterans Covenant Healthcare Alliance. Its goal is to enhance the health and well-being of veterans residing in care homes across England. Although there is no specific mandate requiring all councils to have their care providers enrol in the VFF, some councils and care providers, forward-thinking ones, I would suggest, choose to participate voluntarily to better support veterans. The VFF comprises 8 standards that care providers must meet to gain accreditation. These standards include identifying veterans' well-being needs, addressing social isolation, and providing signposting to local support services, amongst others. Therefore, can the Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care confirm whether Dorset Council mandates our care providers to enrol in the Veteran-Friendly Framework? If not, could you please explain why?
Councillor Robinson.
Steve Robinson, portfolio holder for Adult Social Care. Thank you, Councillor Quayle, for your question. I do have the formal response, but my team will not be surprised to find I want to say something beforehand, briefly. I'm the son of a soldier. My dad joined the army for the Second World War, age 15. He lied about his age. He was captivated by the sense of heroism, the sense of glamour of fighting for one's country. He came back quite broken in body, and which healed, but also in mind, which sadly didn't. I'm convinced that he died quite after a good innings, but with undiagnosed PTSD. So this is an issue that I feel quite strongly about myself. The formal response is, this raises important points about how well our local residential care sector supports the needs of veterans in their later life. Dorset has a strong connection with the armed forces. Nationally, 8% of people in residential care are estimated to be veterans. For Dorset, this would be around 250 people, but in reality, probably quite a lot more. All residential care providers are already expected to work closely with residents to understand their backgrounds, their interests and their experiences, and to build personalised support plans for them. Now, this should include past armed forces service, where there is a significant part of a person's life story. The veteran-friendly framework would support this. I understand nationally there are about 120 care homes signed up to the framework. There are none in Dorset. It would appear that this is not national authorities mandating veteran-friendly frameworks as part of contracting. We don't have authority to mandate the VFF framework across all of the 100 or so residential and nursing homes in the county. Because of where we are in the award of our contracts under the Dorset Care Framework, the timing is a little late and we're quite problematic right now to try and mandate the framework through those contracts. We can look to build that up over time, however. But good news. As a first step, we intend to immediately start raising awareness of the framework amongst our local residential care sector. Prompted by your question, I've asked the Corporate Director for Commissioning and Improvement for Adult Social Care to make contact with the Dorset Care Association to explore how this can be moved forward. Early engagement has already been very positive, and there is a shared sense that local homes would be eager to understand more and engage with the framework. That's the end of the statement. I think you would agree, and everyone in the chamber would agree, that we owe a huge debt of gratitude to those who fight in the armed forces, who serve so that we can enjoy freedoms. And so I'm very happy to respond to your question.
Do you have a supplementary to that?
I do, Chairman, and just to thank, there's some good signs there and some good progression, and I'm delighted to hear that. I would also just point out that Care Dorset is a local authority trading company, so I would suggest we have far more control over Care Dorset, and I would like to see some moves there because unfortunately Care Dorset isn't part of the framework, yet this council has signed up to the Armed Forces Covenant. And unfortunately, across the country, it's easy for organisations like councils to sign up to everything because they don't get challenged anywhere. And this is our time to challenge that. And if we tout Care Dorset as a leading provider for care for residents in Dorset, this is a time for Care Dorset to lead. Thank you.
Councillor Robinson.
Thank you for the comment. I used to be a care provider myself, and I always found there were two groups of people that you could always rely on to deliver care sensitively, compassionately, and to go above and beyond. The first group was ex-nurses, and the second group was those who'd been in the armed forces. They laid down their lives every day in serving others, so I'm very happy to take your proposal forward.
Thank you. Well, the next question is from Councillor Bryan.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll speak as quickly as I can to get this over with quickly. Can the portfolio holder for Place Services explain why the failed trial of reducing the cost of parking in a select number of Tier 3 car parks is to be continued? The cost of the exercise is circa £250,000 a year in lost revenue. This resulted in £250,000 being unavailable to spend on road repairs or other highways issues, such as potholes, cleaning drains, etc., but I include public transport on that as well, because although it's ring-fenced to highways, highways actually features or controls the public transport side as well. When the initial parking review took place on my watch as portfolio holder, we spent a full year looking at how we could better control the churn of motorists so that spaces would become available to those wishing to visit the areas for a short time to enable them to shop, etc. The result was to introduce 3-tier parking charges across the Dorset Council area. Tier 1 was for the smaller rural car parks found in villages and rural areas that don't have the benefit of tourism. Tier 2 was for the larger towns that enjoyed limited tourism. And Tier 3 was for those coastal areas of high demand of both local and visiting motorists, where local people found difficulty finding car park spaces and therefore drove around these areas looking for an available space, hence burning fuel and emitting exhaust gases into the local area. To help the local residents, we introduced a totally new system of car parking permits. These were only available to residents and people working in the Dorset Council area. The result of the experiment is to reduce revenue to highways. Highways repairs features in the top 3 priorities in the residents' survey, so a loss of funding created by this exercise was a loss of money to repair our roads. We should be proud of the work our highways team do. We have some of the best maintained roads in the country. These are not my words, but the words of many visitors who visit the lovely county of Dorset. To improve our network roads, we need more revenue for highways.
Could we have your question, please? Andrews.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Bryan, and I know you're as passionate about highways as I am. So that's really good to hear, and we have been working together. But thank you for your question. We've been clear that we listen to our residents and act on what they had said in a meaningful and positive way. The trial reduction in car parking charges at the Swannery in Weymouth, West Bay Road in West Bay, and Charmouth Road in Lyme Regis shows how we are delivering on this commitment. The reduced charges in those car parks will continue as this has been well received by residents and local businesses. I've looked at the recording from Place and Resources Scrutiny Committee on the 14th of November and note that rather than describing the trial as failed, the Executive Director for Place explained that it would be statistically impossible to link any change in behaviour to changes in car parking prices alone. In the up-and-coming parking review, which will include all car parks that we pay rates on, part of the scope would be involved determining if there are available data that can link car parking charges with local economic activity. Retaining the reduced car prices again this summer will allow 2 years of data to produce, which will help give a better understanding of the trial's impact and the benefits to local businesses. Increasing parking charges is always a difficult decision, and I thank you for highlighting that the money generated from parking income funds work like clearing drains and keeping our roads safe within the overall charges in parking tariffs proposed for this year. There will be a net increase in the amount of money generated, which will go back into providing the essential services you've described.
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Brown?
I have, Madam Chairman, but I'm going to take it outside of this meeting so I can discuss it directly with the portfolio holder.
Thank you very much for that. That's the last of our questions from councillors. So we now move on to item 9, the budget. Councillor Clifford will introduce his report and propose the recommendations.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Simon Clifford, Councillor for Chukra Ward and Cabinet Member for Finance and Capital Strategy. Just before I start, I want to give a couple of thanks. So my thanks for members of all parties who've helped me bed in and get to grips with this role. Questions, suggestions, challenge and support. It's all largely been fair and helpful, and I thank you for it. I'd also like to thank the finance team. Some of the members are sitting at the back here. As work for one team ramps down as the budget is produced, it ramps up for another team. So I particularly pay tribute to our revenues and benefits team, who are about to start the billing process to bring in council tax. And a reminder before I start that a 98.5% collection rate for council tax is remarkable in these times, and I think they deserve great credit. I recently visited them and thanked them personally, but I got a real sense of the work they do, and just some of the numbers to give people an idea of the scale. More than 20,000 households gain local council tax support. 10,000 pensioners are also helped. 60,000 people receive the single person's discount, and there are large numbers of others asking for support, discounts and reductions, for instance 1,300 disabled band reductions. So I think the work that goes on there is fantastic, and I know that all council would thank them for that work they carry out, and I'd ask the directors at the back there to pass on our thanks to them. So, to our budget, to the first Liberal Democrat budget in this building for a generation. More than that, very lukewarm response. More than that, the first budget in this room for a generation with Lib Dem and a Green Council in a very prominent cabinet role who keeps us on our toes and is very forceful in her point of view. So I think it's really great that we've got cross-party involvement through cabinet, and again, I come back to the support across all parties that have been given to me in this role. It has been really helpful, and I do appreciate it. There has been a little bit of pushback over the past few weeks that people will keep standing up in my position and saying, it's tough here, it's challenging, and we have to make really hard decisions. And I will make no apologies for the fact that it's tough here, it's challenging, we have to make really hard decisions. A week ago, I was sitting over there when the Police and Crime panel was sitting here. We had the Chief Constable sitting here, Police and Crime Commissioner sitting there, and their words were, it's tough, it's hard, we're having to make cuts and make really hard decisions. Dorset, in police terms, the second worst funded or lowest funded authority in the country. We, collectively, have for years railed about a fairer funding system for Dorset, and we still don't have it. And as I've reported back through a number of meetings, one, not only do I think we're not going to get it, but I think that we're going to look back on some of these times, challenging as they are, as saying these weren't so bad compared to what comes later. I think it is a fairly bleak scenario. One example of that, we've missed out on £5 million worth of government grant. Now, £5 million out of a budget of 417 might not sound too bad, but to give you some perspective on that, that's 1.5% rise on council tax. And that is the situation we're finding ourselves in. Things are getting tighter and tighter. We're having to work harder and harder. We have lobbied. We'll continue to lobby for a fairer funding system. And on table 13.1, page 45, you'll be able to see it would demonstrate how poorly Dorset Council fares. There's also a warning on page 46. This is a situation that, if continued, will get worse for Dorset. So we have to live within our means. We set a very challenging target for a transformation programme, and transformation in this council has been successful over many years. I was told when I first came here that there were some extremely successful transformation programmes within services and within teams and within directorates. The challenge for us all now is to come together and make that transformation programme work across everything this council does. And coming together as a collective that will be really helpful. I've been very open with the fact that at the end of that programme, Dorset Council will have to be a smaller authority. We have to be compassionate as we deal with it, and we have to look at taking vacancies out first and looking very hard at replacement roles, but we will be a smaller authority in order to have a financially secure future. It's a huge challenge. My final cautionary note is, as this financial year has shown, forecasts are imperfect. They are subject to change. So we have set a larger than normal contingency fund to previous years in order to provide some mitigation against the risks that we're setting ourselves up to deal with. Many of these areas are a prediction of who will need our services, how much the services will cost, and when they will need it, and for how long. They therefore carry risk. Page 63 sets out some of our major budgetary risks. But to steal a phrase from my colleague to my left, now the good news. We are spending a lot of money helping a lot of people. We're spending an extra £40 million in this budget, helping people and investing in our county. Adults, housing and public health, we are increasing spending in that area by just under 10%, 9.5%, an extra £14 million going to vulnerable people who need that help most. Our children's services, we are increasing their spending budget by 2.27%. That's two and a bit million pounds, helping children who need our support and need everything we can do. We've had some really good challenges and good questions on the importance of how we can be preventative in children's and support them as we best can. Our place services, as we've been hearing, we are increasing the spending budget by 4%. That's an extra £4.1 million. And I'm really pleased to confirm that Roads and Highways Works budget has been protected. And our corporate services, we are reducing the spending of that budget by 3.7%. That's £1.7 million less money. So we're investing in the support for those who need it while making efficiencies in the running of the council. And there's a hell of a lot more of that to continue over the course of next year and years after that. I'd like to thank the various chairs of scrutiny for a series of valuable meetings. On top of that, the challenges and suggestions that came through Cabinet and through the whole of our budget process have been helpful and have helped shape some of the decisions that we're making. From people and health, we have listened. reinforced our commitment to supporting charities, the voluntary community and social enterprise sector. And there was a question mark over £440,000 worth of help there. We are now able to ring-fence that support for next year using the Council Plan Priority Fund. From Place, my thanks to the two councillors from Shaftesbury, Councillors Beer and Jeans, who raised concerns over the impact of overnight parking charges on residents. Other councillors also shared their concerns about the impact on a nighttime economy. Just yesterday, solutions were coming forward and also problems were coming forward about on-street parking and how we cope with that. We have put in place a permit system costing £50, which will reduce the claims for Shaftesbury that it will cost £17.50 to park overnight every night, to reduce that to just 96 pence. But I accept that £50 is a lot of money up front. I've been persuaded about that through people like Councillor Weller, Councillor Hope, who have said that a lot of money up front, and we don't have a system currently in this council to enable people to pay in a graduated way, and that's something I hope our transformation programme will take on board and we can learn from. We're not in position to change the budget at the minute, at this phase, because of where we are. What we are able to say is we will look carefully at the imposition of nighttime charges in the car park review that my Cabinet colleague has just intimated we're going to be holding. We are joined up as one in we will look very favourably at that review, and my hope is that we will not introduce car park charges overnight, but instead we will find a way through that car park review to find extra finances to support the budget in a different way. I can't give a commitment because the review has to be held and I can't prejudge it, but that would be my strong hope. Councillors will know there are heavy demands on our services. £85 million was the asking price when we first came in to fully fund everything that everyone wanted to do. We have very limited scope to achieve all our priorities, but we do look to invest in Dorset, support our residents and businesses, and reduce our impact on climate change where we can. That's why we've set aside the Council Plan Priorities £1 million. A third of that has been allocated to convert our council vehicles to use biofuels. I'm told that this will have the biggest impact that this council can make and in the way it runs itself in terms of climate change. I've already given you a suggestion that £450 million for the voluntary community sector will also be supported through that fund. We're using the rest to repurpose our teams to boost opportunities for economic growth in Dorset. As you may have seen in local papers and through other media, there are some very significant opportunities in the Port of Portland, Weymouth, Gillingham, and the surrounding area, a travel to work area that takes in every part of Dorset, from Fern down to Lyme Regis, from Shaftesbury, Gillingham and Sherborne, right the way down to the Port of Portland. The prospects are that big. We need to be able to invest to support them to make sure we can land some of these nationally important schemes. We will hold back some of the funding from that Council Priorities Fund in order to achieve that and listen to our residents about elements of our spending plans. I'm proud of the way we've moved away from the significant but temporary support provided by both the current and the previous administrations for our most hard-pressed families and the cost of living crisis. £2 million has been put in there. We are proposing £2 million to be spent over the next 4 years, built into our budget, which will help people who need it most. We will work with our charity and voluntary partners and with families who need the help and this help in the future. I don't want to lose sight in this report of it's not just the spending money, it's also the capital money, the money we use to build stuff. In this report, there's a huge programme of major works in the capital budget, which has an impact across the whole of Dorset, from coastal works to social care accommodation, heritage, climate change, cycle lanes, bus stops, a vast programme where we are setting aside tens of millions of pounds to invest in our county. When we came to the council in May, we said we wanted to deliver our manifesto priorities, and this budget is the first step to do just that, to push for all the affordable housing that we need, to work alongside businesses and education providers to help boost job prospects, to use all our assets for the benefit of Dorset, to recognise our obligations around climate change and the nature emergency, and finally, and for me, most importantly, to provide vital services for our most vulnerable people. We all know the phrase, fix the roof while the sun is shining. Well, we're putting £4.77 million back into reserves, into our savings, to give us more protection as finances get ever tougher. I always believe replenishing your savings is a sign of good budgeting and sound finances. And when I look outside, it's not a sunny day. It's already fairly bleak and dark looking. I can see a big black cloud on the horizon, so this feels like a really prudent step to take. So I ask Council to note these supplementary papers published on Friday as the government finally gave us their final settlement. I'd note in particular the final supplement paper that references changes in business rates for private schools and propose the recommendations as set out in full in the paper. I thank you.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that proposal? Councillor Ireland.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Ireland, Leader of Council. I would like to thank my colleague for his speech, and I would like to wholeheartedly second this. I will reserve my right to speak at the end, please.
Now I'd like other group leaders to have their time to talk about the budget. So I'll start with Councillor Parry.
Thank you, Chair. I'd said to my group, we won't go political on this. I said, they don't go political on us, we won't go political on them. And then, of course, the opening sentence, Liberal Democrat administration, first time county hall in a generation, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So what we're actually talking about here is change. And we have to recognise Dorset residents have seen change politically in two ways in the last 12 months, both here in County Hall and nationally at Parliament. So the new government decided it would tackle family farms and tax them out of existence. It would go after the winter heating fuel allowance and ensure that our residents were poorer and colder this winter. And then we thought, well, maybe, just maybe, government will put some more money in the coffers of local governments. No. The settlement this year from government is less than it's going to cost us to employ a new chief executive. That's how little government, this new government, thinks about local government in the shires. They are woefully, and you referred to, £5 million of grant settlement there being not given to us. We've really got to get this message through somehow through our MPs to Whitehall that the settlement that the shires are receiving is woeful and unacceptable. Your own election success. We all congratulated you on it. You won. We read your leaflets. My colleague, Councillor O'Leary, frequently refers to them in the chamber. So if we talk about that for a moment, how would this budget look on one of your leaflets? What is this budget about? It's delivering an above-inflation precept maxed out at 4.99%. You've not only increased charges, you plan to introduce new charges, the most controversial being nighttime parking. You have got through an enormous amount of capital reserves. Yes, some money's going back in the pot, thank goodness, else we would be at a critical point. But we think in this side of the chamber, there may be something that can be done to improve that situation further. And my colleague, Councillor Suttle, will address that later. You didn't deliver £8 million worth of savings in the last year that had been built into the budget. Your choice. You chose to put those programmes on pause. You chose to spend £500,000 employing consultants to tell you how to save the money. We hope their knowledge is worth it, because if not, our future is more bleak than your painting. So the budget we have, in effect, is about taxing more and giving less. We know that there's going to be a transformation programme that has, so far from what we can see, employed executives and will cut staff numbers. Whether you are able to fill the potholes, cut the grass verges, get the bins emptied, process the HCPs, and ensure that adult care needs are met is a tall ask. And on the back of this budget, I have some grave concerns that you're not going to deliver it.
Your time's up, but I'm sure you'd have one more sentence.
Well, I was just going to add on, you are going about this taxing like no one is watching and cutting services like no one is noticing. And that, I'm afraid, is not acceptable.
Thank you, Councillor Parry. Now I call on Councillor Sutton.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Claire Sutton, leader of the Green Group. There are a few statements there, Andrew, which I would take issue with, but I think I'll leave that to the money people. Those of us who were councillors prior to 2024 know that this is always challenging, largely because successive Conservative governments have decimated funding to local government and because Dorset has fared particularly poorly, despite having a full suite of Conservative MPs until last year. And now, the Labour government has indirectly walloped us on national insurance. Goes on and on, doesn't it? Quite simply, though, whilst we'll continue to express our consternation and we'll continue to lobby, we have to serve our residents to the best of our ability, regardless. This is why I voted for the last 4 budgets and, subject to this evening's debate, intend to vote for this one too. The Green Group, we don't whip. Well, not in public. Sorry, bit inappropriate. We each vote as our judgment and conscience dictates. But we do seek consensus where possible. On balance, we all intend to support this budget for the following reasons. The Lib Dem manifesto, which informs it, was significantly similar to our own. We too prioritised housing and responding to the climate crisis, but also children and young people, which is captured in Communities for All, and which I push as a priority through my cabinet role, and public transport, where we continue to push for greater investment. The transfer of assets and some services to town and parish councils is long overdue, as is the disposal of surplus assets, so we welcome the capital investment which will kickstart the process in terms of getting them up to standard. We also welcome the priority pot, not least because it will enable us to green our fleet and hence contribute significantly to carbon reduction. And in uncertain and challenging times, rebuilding reserves which were significantly eroded under previous administration is surely essential. We also believe that change can be an opportunity as well as a threat. It is vital that we communicate openly and effectively with our staff so they are engaged in rather than alienated by the transformation programme. In conclusion, we won't all agree with everything in here. Councillor Borden would like more for buses. Councillor Gibson would like more for economic development. I'd like more for youth clubs, but we have statutory responsibilities and increasing levels of need within adults and children's social care and are obliged to set a balanced budget. One sentence. In the interest of all Dorset residents, we have a collective responsibility to prioritise and on balance. My Green colleagues and I believe this budget does that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton. Now, Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Rob Hughes, Ward Member for the Island Royal Manor of Portland. On behalf of the independents of Dorset, I would like to say the following regarding the budget for 25-26. I had hoped to have started my speech by thanking the new Labour government for increasing their grant support aid. Alas, I can't do that, as they've given so little funding to Dorset while forcing the council to raise the highest available council tax from our residents, setting a budget of 417 million for the year ahead with rising costs. The council has calculated we are looking at an increase in spending of over £85 million to deliver its services in 25-26. This is due to the ever-growing need for support services within our community, with extra demand for housing, children's services, and a population that is getting older every year. In fact, we have the oldest demographic in the country, one of the highest levels of council tax also. To meet this 85 million spending increase, the Labour government is providing us with just under 3.9 million of funding. The remainder is to come from 18.3 million raised by increasing the council tax to the allowable maximum of 4.99%. This includes the 2% for adult care precept, giving us a sum of 22.2 million, increasing to 40.5 of revenue when combined with other income sources that the council receives, leaving us with a shortfall still of 44.6 million to meet the statutory commitments. This shortfall will be met by savings and efficiencies that have been identified by the council. The officers of the council have worked hard to bring in a balanced budget in these difficult circumstances, and we take this opportunity to thank them for their time spent in grappling with the budget for this fiscal year ahead. The two scrutiny committee members have worked with our officers. We have attended the budget CAFs that were arranged for us, and we all understand the pressures ahead of us. Despite the continuing lack of government funding, we will be supporting this budget and all the difficult adjustments that will have to be made in order to fund this shortfall, as we are forced to transform the council to meet our obligations. In future, the government, whoever it may be, must change the way it delivers the local authority funding, or else it could well be facing a whole raft of councils going bust in the coming months ahead, despite their best efforts. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I call on Councillor Weller.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Councillor Kate Weller, Leader, Labour Group, Rodwell and Wyke Ward. May I start by thanking Aidan and all the financial team for their work on the budget. It becomes a more difficult task every year. Each year we complain about the RSG formula. It does not favour Dorset and representations have not been heard. And I know when I reiterate that sentiment that it will get sneers from a number of my opposition colleagues. The poor RSG has always been the case and still is the case. And there's been insufficient time for our new Labour MPs to make any meaningful difference to that this year. However, we must collectively work for those changes over the coming year. We regularly speak of the low base rate in Weymouth and Portland, but actually 51% of Dorset homes are in band A to C. Dorset currently is home to a high percentage of over 80s. Very many of these are not self-funding when they require care. We're seen as rural, but we have a large common conurbation with high house prices and low wages. All these factors impact on the budget-setting process. Accepting that we are in a difficult position this year and unpalatable decisions need to be made, we are alarmed by many of the elements of the budget. Councillor Kimber and I are concerned about the proposed redundancies. We have sought reassurance that loss of staff will be managed sensitively and will not seriously impact upon our ability to deliver our services, and we'll be monitoring this. Proposals for spending our income across the county seem ill thought through. We're concerned at how small the budget is for supporting business and creating jobs. We believe this should be given a greater priority. Growing our local economy is our way out of our difficulties, both financial and social. We know this, and yet still this administration insists on woolly aspiration, completely devoid of all substance. We pride ourselves on the diverse cultural offer across the county, and yet we intend to charge to park at night. That will seriously impact not just on Weymouth, but all our towns. Suggesting that a season ticket will mitigate, I'm afraid, is nonsense. Many of our residents will simply stop coming into town at all. No increased revenue for the council, and reduced income for our business. And I hear your proposals for a review, and I welcome those. However, are you suggesting you're going to complete that in the next couple of weeks? I think not. I've been involved in reviews on council parking for years. I cannot support this budget with the impact so heavily upon the county's nighttime economy and pays so little attention to investment for growth. Please, colleagues, when agreeing this budget, do not just grab at the quick wins. Think more imaginatively with more true vision. The Liberal Democrats promised a new broom. Would you like me to buy you one?
Thank you, Councillor Weller. Now, I think we have Councillor Suttle waiting to speak to us.
Oh, sorry.
Good evening, Gary Suttle, representing Swanage. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the portfolio holder for the budget. I'd like to thank all of the officers. I know just how much hard work has gone into this, and I really do appreciate it. But now I must be that irritating person who stands up when I used to sit there and tell me that they'd like to make some amendments after all the work I'd done. And mostly it used to annoy me because they would never tell me how they were going to fund it. So let me give you this preamble. I've always believed that council land should be used in conjunction with community land trusts to deliver the priority of building local houses for local people. I mentioned it in my last budget. I mention it now because this could be funded by repurposing capital receipts. As a consequence, the revenue budget summarised in Appendix 1, I believe, should be amended by reallocating up to £1.5 million of the housing transformation funding, and I believe it should be spent on three things, which would be amendments. Let me just give you the headings and then I'll give you my reasoning. So one would be the cost of living pressure. I believe that should be increased from 500,000 to a million to 1.5 rather, by a million to 1.5. Secondly, I believe that you should remove the evening and nighttime car parking total. And thirdly, I believe the budget for youth work should be doubled from 100,000 to 200,000. My reasoning: the cost of living demand is 1.5 million. I commend you put in a £500,000 solid commitment every year for the life of the rest of it. But unless you've managed to somehow produce the miracle of loaves and fishes into long-term feeding 5,000, you just cannot spend 2 million with a cost of 6. These people are a real crisis. They really need our help. We put it in last time. If you take the item 1 by putting the money back in the budget, you can afford to do it. The car parking charges, if we just very quickly go on planning, which remove the need for parking, we've built hundreds of flats in town centres. Where do they park? They park overnight in car parks. What are we going to do? These are the lowest paid, living in the lowest cost accommodation in our county. They park in those car parks. £2.50, what's £2.50? However, it means everything to some. The £50 permit, great. But if you can't afford £2.50, where are you going to get £50 from? I know it sounds ridiculous to a lot of you, but that is just a fact, and we should remove it. Last year, Councillor Sutton, Councillor Fry lobbied me heavily to increase the budget from 100,000 to 200,000. And I then consequently went on to talk to a lot of youth groups. And I realised that this money, and especially given the talks we've given this evening, just 100,000 spent in youth will save you millions in the future. Because if you support the youth of Dorset now, they will become the citizens you want them to be in the future. So I'm asking you to increase from 100 to 200. And those are my 3 amendments to your budget. Fully funded. I just ask you to agree. It's quite simple. I'm having a good evening so far, don't ruin it. Thank you very much.
The second for that? Councillor Flower.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I
very happy to second the amendments as set out by Councillor Sutton and reserve my right to come back at the end of the debate. Thank you.
Have a debate on the amendment. Anyone like to speak? Councillor Vital?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. James Vitali, Stourbridge and Marnell Ward. Can I commend Councillor Suttle's amendment to the Council? I think it's sensible, I think it's pragmatic, and I think it's constructive. In the Cabinet update sent to us all earlier today, the portfolio holder for housing identified that the key problem remains that demand for housing in the County of Dorset outstrips the supply of housing, and she's surely correct in that analysis. But to that end, spending an extra £1.5 million, a big chunk of the extra revenue that we're hoping to receive from the Second Homes Levy, on effectively staffing and administration and not on real investments in new homes, doesn't seem to me to be the best use of taxpayers' money. The principal challenge, as Councillor Suttle identified in his speech to delivering new housing, continues to be that the supply of land is extremely constrained. And the Council has a key role here. We often have the right land in our ownership in the right places around the county. This amendment will help us make use of that land in connection with communities and community land trusts, and it promote investment in new housing. And repurposing that money for new council priorities, particularly the cost of living support, is a much more sensible use of that 1.5 million. This is a pragmatic amendment to the budget. It will improve it. It's less than 0.5% of the total spend, and I hope councillors will support it.
Now we have Councillor Ireland.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm just going to respond generally to where the money is coming from. I was the person who proposed the amendment to the council tax second homes paper, which I think was this time last year, if I remember rightly. I did so for very good reasons. It was to make sure that the housing crisis in this county, in this Dorset Council's area, it does apply to the county as well, was addressed. We have promised, for example, as Councillor O'Leary keeps pointing out, to build council houses. We've only been in power for 6 or so months. Council houses take longer to build, and we still have that aspiration to do so in conjunction with RPs. The money we're going to ring fence, which was 40%, we don't know the exact money we're going to get because people are flipping homes into businesses and selling them. Lots of houses in my own village have gone on the market and they were all second homes. Some of them are being bought by people who are actually living there. What I will say is that money is already earmarked for a purpose. Councillor Taylor behind me, who is our housing lead for the Cabinet, has a paper coming to overview, I believe, in March, Cabinet in April and full Council in May. I believe I got the dates right. And one of our targets that paper will set out is to remove the use of B&Bs for temporary accommodation for homeless people. Putting a family unit, how many young kids, 2, 3, mum, dad, partners, in a B&B in this day and age in one of the richest countries in the world is completely unacceptable in my view. It also costs us money, let's face it. We fund a lot of the hotels around Weymouth and Portland in particular and elsewhere. If you only look at the list of things we pay over £500 each month, there's a huge list, loads of items, a lot of them are temporary accommodation. We're going to set ourselves a target to remove, if we can, and it's a target, we're confident we can pretty get near it, is to remove the use of B&Bs for temporary accommodation. That money, the 40% of which you're going to raise some of it, is for use to do that. And the way we're going to do that is essentially buy houses. We're going to put people in those houses so they have a safe, warm accommodation with laundry facilities, washing facilities, cooking facilities, and they'll stay there until we find, through our council's statutory responsibilities, somewhere for them to live. So please don't take this money, because we've already going to plan to use it.
Anyone else like to make a comment on the amendment?
Thank you, Chair. It's just really, I've got more questions. I wanted to know, you're talking about this particular land to sell. Would that be for social housing or public housing? Not the same? Not to sell, but to build, yeah. And would it be for, the question is, would it be for social housing? God's honour.
Next we have Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. And thank you for the amendment. Very interesting. It would be quite sad if myself, as the portfolio holder for housing, didn't stand up and speak, and I excuse the croak. I find it a really interesting amendment. This council is aspirational for housing. We are really, really ambitious. Under the Conservative government, underneath the Conservative administration, we passed a housing strategy, and that is what we are delivering on. And we need our funding to be able to deliver on it. As Councillor Ireland said a few minutes ago, there are some really big, meaty papers coming through on housing in the next few months. I've already set up a housing member working group on this to look at what we're intending to do, where the money is going to come from, and what we intend to spend it on. And I'm really saddened that at this late stage of the budget that you're proposing that you remove some of the money that we need desperately to do that. We've allocated it. So please, if I can talk across the council, please don't vote for this amendment, because basically it will change an awful lot of what we can do. It was mentioned by Councillor Ireland about temporary accommodation, and I've got some of the figures here now. We are doing a fantastic job in Dorset on temporary accommodation. 18 months ago, we had 375 people in temporary accommodation. We've now reduced that to 225, which is quite amazing. That has saved us over £3 million. This is all about council savings. Numbers of people in B&B. That was at its height, was around about 70. The figures I've been given today, we've got 11 families, people in bed and breakfast. And that is really bucking the trend across the country. Most people, most councils are increasing their B&B spend. We're not. We are bucking the trend here. And I want to keep on that way, simply because it's far, far better for our residents. It's far, far better for these people, many of whom are quite vulnerable. When you end up in B&B, it's not a joke. It's not good fun. You're in B&B because you're homeless. And how scary is that? And yet you're proposing cutting funding that we're using for this. Much of the investment has been done on prevention, and I don't want that cut at all, because that is where this comes from. So I would implore you not to vote for this, because basically, if we start cutting our housing services, then we are going to be in real problems. And I will say, it would have been really useful to have that amendment earlier, because I can't actually see it on the screen. So I'm basically going blind at the moment. So if there's a way that we can all have these earlier so that we can actually look at them and consider them, that would be really useful. Thank you.
Thank you. We now have Councillor Northern.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you all for presenting the budget as a whole. Okay, I will speak and see if the microphone picks it up. Is that good? Thank you. I've been impressed. I'm a newbie. I've only been a councillor at Dorset Council for a year, and I've been impressed in all the time that's been taken over producing this budget. I found it difficult sometimes to track what's going on. And I also, when I was a town councillor before this, was very frustrated with Dorset Council. The community land trusts in Weymouth went to Dorset Council repeatedly and said, can we have some of your land for land trusts, and got ignored. They didn't even get an answer. And I was horrified by that. So I'm very surprised to see item 1 on there. That's the only item that I'm going to talk about. and I'm struggling myself to read it at this distance. If you could make the text bigger, that would be helpful. Yeah, there we go. So I agree that Dorset Council should be using its land to build for the benefit of the community, and a lot of that is about housing. So when the asset management plan came up to Council, I asked questions about that, and I was given the assurance, and it's in that asset management plan, that no longer are we just looking to sell off our land for the maximum profit to save on rates. We're now going to use it for community benefit, and that includes for housing. So I think that item is irrelevant because it's already in the plan, and it's already in the budget. And the other thing I'd say about community land trusts, there are some wonderful community land trusts, and they do things very well, and I've been to one of the biggest ones over in Bridport, really great, but most community land trusts are quite small, and they're not really going to address the scale of the problem we have in Dorset for affordable homes. We need to be building on our brownfield sites in our urban areas more affordable homes. Trouble is, the market doesn't like doing that because it costs more money. We own some of that land. We present an opportunity. So I'm hoping, and it is hope still, because it's really difficult to commit to this stuff, that given the change of rules that's been put in place by the new administration, that we will actually, over time, because it doesn't happen instantly, over time, we'll start to hit more affordable homes, by which I mean homes for rent primarily, because we talk about all these homes which go for shared ownership. Shared ownership is beyond many people, if it's at 80% of market values or even 30% off market values, it's still beyond many people. It's rented accommodation is our real shortage. And I've been involved in the economic growth. One of the biggest handicaps to economic growth is the lack of housing in Dorset for people, particularly in key worker areas. So I would say to Council, I will be voting against this because I think that item 1 there is the only one I'm going to talk about, is already well within the budget. So I see this as unnecessary. Thank you.
Councillor Lacey Clark.
Yeah, just checking. I couldn't quite hear, Chairman. That was me, yeah? Yes? Okay, no response. Cool. I wasn't going to speak on the amendment, but I want to just cover something. I agree that having a last minute on the night amendment coming forward is more difficult because you haven't had much time to look at it. And that would always make me slightly reticent. But I think what's even harder is when we hear about things being referred to that aren't in the budget at all. Because actually the idea that there could be not having the evening charges might be something we possibly look at in this parking review. Well, that's not in the budget. However, the promise that we will increase them is in the budget. The idea that we might be building more houses, again, great, with the policy's going to come forward on that. Brilliant. What's in the budget is that the money from the second homes is going into business as usual in the housing. That's where it is in the actual budget appendix. It was brought up. That's where it's brought up in the scrutiny committees. And so we're voting on those that are actually in there. If that isn't the case, maybe amendments won't be needed, but we don't know the future. If we're voting on the budget as it is, then I support this amendment. And I think that's how we have to look at it currently, is what we're actually voting on, not what might happen in a few months' time.
Thank you. Councillor Ryan Hope.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Councillor Ryan Hope, portfolio holder for Customer Culture, Community Engagement and ward member for Westham and Weymouth. I've got a lot of respect, I think, for an alternative budget coming forward in an amendment, because I can see that a lot of thought has gone into this. It's not just, I want to do something different. You've actually put the time to structure that. So I do respect that. But what I'm struggling to support the fact is that none of this came forward at scrutiny. None of this came forward at Budget Cafe. It's the last attempt to say, we would do something different with you. We don't support your budget. Now, in particular, I wanted to pick up the £1.5 million cost of living, as I would under my portfolio. And I was delighted, obviously, that we brought in the £2 million this year. But it was very, very clear with that commitment that that would be a one-year support in preventative work. And that's why the budget has been set this year to 500,000. And that's because we feel that a lot of work has been done preventative. And whilst I would appreciate more in my pot, so to say, to continue a lot more of this work, I think removing it from the budget line that we're looking at is actually going to have further hardship on the cost of living. This £1.5 million of remaining in this housing budget line will support affordable, quality housing for our residents. That's what they need to get out of the cost of living crisis, and that's why I cannot support this amendment.
Councillor Azad.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I certainly can't support this amendment because when the opposition now were in power, they had every chance to put lots more money into the youth centres, which they didn't do. They cut them completely. They only put 100,000 in. And also, the fact is the £1.5 million that you're talking about repurposing the capital from the Housing Transformational Fund will not actually help anyone in the future for long term. You've got to remember that we are looking at 4 or 5 years of funding. We are not looking on 1 year on one as the administration did in years past. We are committing to a process of significant transformation of services coupled with the introduction of new ways of generating income. And the thing is, with actually you saying that the cost of living fund ought to be more each year, when you did not actually, as a administration, put anything forward for a cost of living, only 1 million or 2 million went really a couple of years ago. So I think that you've got to actually rethink and say when you had the chance to put extra money in, it was not there. And I would say that the actual having extra money for housing people is one of the most important things that we are striving for, and therefore I cannot support your amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Sutton.
Thank you, Chair. It's the third element, obviously, Gary. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. I actually remember the dates of this really clearly because as an opposition backbencher, you don't get a lot of wins. I mean, you do in your own ward, but I remember I first raised this in February 23, and I was on your back for over 12 months, you and Aidan, me and Les Fry. And when we eventually sat down in the room, I think it was about March 24, you said, I'll put another 100K on. I said, I think it should be 1,000K. Can we meet in the middle? You're following. Sorry, I said I think it should be 1 million. I said, you know, can we meet in the middle? So you know how strongly I feel about this. So once we started the budget process, this is one of the very, very, very first things I went to our executive director to check about, and he categorically assured me that that 200 is in the base budget. I will go away and double check that, but that's the assurance I was categorically given at that time.
Councillor Parry.
Thank you, Chair. Perhaps the Executive Director for Finance Matters will be able to confirm that he did inform my colleague earlier that the Youth Fund is stated at £100,000, not as £200,000 for this coming year. Sorry, I believe the Corporate Director on that matter gave Councillor Suttle the information. Let's deal with some of these matters. So, Councillor Hope, I understand that you were very uncomfortable with your town council proposing a 5% rise in council tax precept. Yet here tonight in this chamber, you're incredibly comfortable with that. But that 5% is a much greater amount of money to your residents in their council tax precepts. So you will excuse me if I take with a slight pinch of salt some of your feelings towards it. Turning to Councillor Ezard and her comments about the previous administration's commitment to different forms of support during what were some very difficult times that we spoke about earlier off the back of the pandemic. I, along with the then Member of Parliament for covering your Wareham constituency, did indeed visit the facilities in Wareham where the Holiday Activity and Food Fund was being used. Social funding for projects that we've spoken about, cost of living matters in one form or another, is something that throughout the previous administration we supported. And it came and culminated in the £2 million fund being agreed in the last budget. But for some reason, you've tried to do a smoke and mirrors process to suggest that we didn't do that. We did it throughout in one form or another. That support was there. The youth fund that we've touched on, yes, it started at £100,000. And over time, as word spread, it became oversubscribed. What a good positive outcome. More and more people came forward and said, our youth project and our community would benefit from this funding. And I know you lobbied, Councillor Suttle, and I, as a cabinet member at one time as well, was always trying to push the envelope and see if we could get a bit more for it. And I was very pleased and very happy to support in the last budget £200,000. I don't know why that has been wound back, and I do hope you will raise that with officers. Turning to Councillor Taylor's comments around housing, bed and breakfast is no laughing matter. It's one step up from living on the streets for too many of our residents, or too many Dorset people. And enormous efforts have been put in by our housing team, and I applaud those efforts to try and to address those who are sleeping rough on the streets, to get them into bed and breakfast, and hopefully then onto a more settled housing solution. And there are numerous examples of that success happening, and we applaud them for it. But this council, and I don't know why, because the policy was set between myself as the Cabinet Member for Property and Assets and Councillor Somper, who was then the Cabinet Member for Housing Matters, that void properties would be turned around in 28 days. There are far too many void properties, dozens of them, on our books that have exceeded that level. And I do absolutely insist, if nothing else comes out of tonight's meeting on housing matters, please go back to officers and understand what is going on with those void properties, because that is the stepping stone solution to the B&B issue. And that is the summary of the points that I hope has been raised. I do, of course, support my colleague in his amendment. He has thought it through. He has discussed it with officers. It's nonsense to suggest that these matters have suddenly come out. Disquiet amongst the councillors about nighttime parking charges is nothing new. And if you didn't pick that up through the whole process of scrutiny, then you are tone deaf to the message from the council chamber on whatever we say or do. Youth work, you are tone deaf if you haven't picked up on that. And I have to say, when it comes to the cost of living crisis, in one form or another, there always seems to be a perpetual challenge here. Whether it's a stock market crisis, a fuel crisis, a pandemic, a credit crunch in the banks, whatever it is, at some point in time, there is a sector of our community that experiences hardship, extreme hardship. And we have found a way through this cost of living fund to hopefully ease them on through the storm and into calmer waters. And that is why we've suggested that the evidence is that that's a £1.5 million cost to this council every year. Let's keep it at that.
Councillor Beddoe.
Thank you, Chairman. Our cost of living work continues to develop under new and growing needs, which we have heard from our voluntary and community organisation partners is still on the rise. Those aren't my words. Those are Councillor Hope's words in his update sent out to all councillors today. I think we should move to the vote.
Councillor Hobbs-Chell.
Thank you. Councillor Hobbs-Chell, Ferndown South Ward. Just this weekend, I supported two people who had just become homeless, were living in a car and were vulnerable. It is heartbreaking, and whilst all safeguarding measures, referrals and support was instigated, it once again highlights the critical and fundamental role of housing as the backbone of support for vulnerable residents. I am grateful to see built into the budget support for the voluntary sector, who can act dynamically to address crises and difficulties that our most vulnerable residents face, and indeed drive excellence and transformation. I am grateful to see that Children's Services have a greater budget and support this in the original budget. We need to think strategically rather than deliver sticking plasters, and I believe that housing is the most critical and fundamental preventative work that Council can deliver, and for this reason I am against the amendment.
Councillor Flower, would you like to now speak?
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Spencer Flower, Verwood Ward. In May 24, the people of Dorset voted for a change at Dorset Council on the promises which the Liberal Democrat administration referred to many times as manifesto priorities. On closer examination, of course, we discovered that despite what was contained in election material, they're overseeing and offering a budget which they suggest complies with the Dorset Plan, which I've said before is very narrowly based and influenced by the feedback from most of the most recent public satisfaction survey. And I certainly don't believe that is the case at all. So the question is, did some of the Lib Dems mislead the electorate in 2024? When the Conservative group under my leadership left office in May 24, we had balanced budgets, no service cuts and rising reserves. So successful were Dorset Council that we were shortlisted for the final 5 for the prestigious Council of the Year award. This was remarkable given that we were only 5 years old and had come through well from the disruption of the COVID pandemic, and yet still managed to save over 120 million through transformation. The Liberal Democrat budget before us for approval this evening is an act of self-harm based on pursuing politically driven agendas on net zero and social housing to the detriment of the taxpayers of Dorset and those who depend on our frontline services. I seconded the amendment, which was tabled before, because of the changes offer a far better and more balanced approach, whilst keeping a balanced budget and serving the people of Dorset in a far better way. This council should be using the benefit of the additional council tax from second homes or holiday lets let's keep the service charge at an affordable level and not impact on the nighttime economy by introducing overnight charging, particularly for those residents who live in the old market towns with limited off-street parking available. Further, we should be concentrating on maximising social housing for rent, shared equity, by working with not against our registered providers who operate in Dorset. They've got a good track record of providing additional affordable housing and, importantly, at no cost to the local taxpayer. Also, the alternative approach outlined by Gary Suttle this evening is by far the better and more affordable and achievable option. And on the question of we're going to deprive people with £1 million, you might get 3 properties for £1 million, can I draw attention to this chamber to an item on the Audit and Governance Committee about the serious backlog of property that we own that we can't use for those that are homeless. The leader of this group mentioned that earlier, and I know that's a serious item because the internal auditors have brought it to our attention more than once, and we haven't dealt with it. So before we start making noises about what we can do with £1 million, let's get the capital project sorting out the property that we could be using to keep people out of bed and breakfast. Looking back, Madam Chairman, to the legacy left by the Conservative administration, which I was proud to lead, it breaks my heart to see how quickly the Liberal Democrat administration are damaging the financial stability of Dorset Council and the social well-being for Dorset people. I and my Conservative group colleagues invested a huge amount of personal capital during the 5 years of 2019 to 2024, always serving the best interests of the people that we serve across the Dorset area, and it shows from positive feedbacks. I urge councillors to support the Conservative Group's sensible budget amendment tabled before us this evening. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Before we vote, the proposer of the original motion, Councillor Clifford, has the right to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Simon Clifford, Cabinet Member for Finance. Do you know, I actually think they believe it. I do. They actually believe their own press. What a load of tosh. So, I think this amendment has got some really interesting points in it and some merit that warrants proper discussion, but not in a way it's framed, and certainly not in the language that's been used to describe it. The idea that of a budget of £417 million, which is damaging, according to Councillor Flower, damaging, they've decided to pick holes with 1.5 million. That's nothing. Nothing at all. So they actually agree with 99.5% of everything that's in the budget, just that one little bit. So it's nonsense. I described earlier on that we are ensuring £444,000 can be used for preventative work in adults on the edge of care. That is people in crisis. We are spending the money that we've got here already allocated on homeless people. They are people in crisis. We're all doing some of this work, and effectively what you're doing here in this amendment is taking away some of that really vital work, and that's not acceptable to throw that back at you. I already, right at the very beginning of this meeting, suggested very strongly that your second point is irrelevant, because I do not believe that we will be putting in nighttime car parking, but we are going to go through a review process. So there you go. So that's two down. That leaves you with £100,000 increase on youth work. I think with some sensible conversations outside this meeting, if you can describe where you're going to go and how you think it would be used, we would look favourably on that where possible. So I reject this amendment. We've had an awful lot of words that have been spoken about the whole of the budget that haven't referred to this amendment, and I suggest, Chair, it's time we actually got on with the vote.
Right, before we get on with the vote, I think the Chief Executive would like to say something.
Thank you, Chair. Twice in a meeting. Unique. Councillor Suttle, you've asked I asked that each of the allocations and amendments 2I to IV are taken separately. However, if you do that and the first item is voted against, the whole so you want to take them as a whole, just to clarify. Okay.
So we're now having one vote. Oh, so we're having one vote on all of them together now.
Correct.
We're voting on the amendment, not the original proposal.
Voting on the amendment, not on the original.
One moment, councillors. The vote isn't open yet. We've just got an technical issue. Bear with us. Wiggle everything. Wiggle everything. Yeah. Short power. No. No, we're switch over.
It's stuck on that machine.
What? That one? Do you need me to stop sharing? Yeah. Sharing. That'll be it. Sharing. Yeah. Hey. Have you opened the vote? Yes.
So we now vote on the amendment for the budget.
Councillors, the vote is now open. Councillor Scott Florett, could you press your button for us, please? 64.
Yeah, that's done.
Yeah.
Just 64.
Yeah. Yeah. And then
Just 64.
Just 64. Duncan, can you vote? We'll do it again. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah. Thank you. The vote is now closed. Yep. The result of the vote are 29 in favour of the amendment, 49 against, no abstentions. Therefore, the amendment is lost.
Now the amendment is lost, we will go to debate the original budget recommendations. Does anybody want to talk on the original recommendations? Councillor Knocklacey.
Budget will be...
Currently on here.
Yeah, so budget, it'll be that one. Okay. 8K. That's it. Yeah. They're going to talk about it.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, I had to wait for the microphone to turn on. Nocturne Lacey Clark, one of the councillors for the Blandford Forum ward. I'm sure most of you know me. I have 2 points on the budget as a whole. As I say, the amendment was totally different, taken out separately. The first point I would like to make is one on the actual damage this will do to the residents that I represent. And I am speaking specifically, because I'm sure a lot of people talk about the 5% increase on the nighttime charges, which is in the budget. We are voting for that today. I don't like the idea of, oh, but I've told you I might take it out. Either commit it's gone and not in there, or it is in there. And while it's in there, I cannot support it. When I first got elected onto the council, working with Councillor Byron Quayle, we did an extensive parking review in Blandford, which highlighted the massive issue we have of danger caused by people parking at night, blocking the small roads, which if you look at the amount of bins missed and all the evidence on that way, it is a constant issue in Blandford. The only remedy they could find that actually helped alleviate the situation was having the overnight parking in the car parks. Having that removed is going to cause us a real major issue for all of the residents in the centre of town. And I know you say £50 a year to have the parking permit, but in reality, we know a large number of very low-income families that have no choice about where they live will have to pay for that. And we know they probably won't. And they'll end up parking on the side streets, on the single yellows, overnight, causing a very dangerous situation for what would gain us a very small amount of money. I don't see the net benefit. It does bring me on to my second point, which is on my technical side of things, where I like to disagree with people like Aidan and Jonathan and always enjoy that thing. I don't believe it is a balanced budget because, again, the nighttime parking, we've said it will come in with that much money. It's going to cost us a lot more to do it. Having spoken to the enforcers, as it's at night in poorly lit car parks and our lone safety working procedures, they will have to go in pairs. And actually, I'm not sure that's been costed in the actual increased income from it, because we're going to be having 30% more time enforcing it with double the staff in that area. So I'm not sure that is balanced. I also have an issue with this money from the second homes, where it's being put currently. Because as it sets in Appendix 1A, is it, the one we were talking about earlier, it's very clear that it's going into just housing in general. The actual minute from the meeting when it was agreed what would happen with that is exceptionally specific. And I do not believe that the way it's been allocated fits what was said in there. And I therefore cannot support this budget for the local resident reason and then my technicalities, which are over 2 small areas, I'll give you that. But those 2 small areas, to me, mean I don't consider it a balanced budget. Thank you.
Anyone else like to make a comment?
Thank you very much. The Cabinet will be delighted. I've not got a very good throat, so I shall keep it somewhat brief.
Just sit down, Louis, it's fine.
I'll go home now. A Cabinet member talked about Tosh and believing your own sort of prayers. I'll tell you what I did believe. I believe the promises you made in your leaflets. Your leaflet said, Simon says the Conservatives at Dorset Council keep increasing council tax when families are struggling and they're going to do it again next year. Well, you're in charge and you're doing it again. We lost. We accept that. No one was probably more critical of the previous administration on this side of the chamber as I was, as most ex-Cabinet members don't speak to me. And I'm not going to criticise you for actually putting council tax up. I genuinely don't believe you want to put council tax up. I really don't believe it. I don't think anybody in here does, even the socialist friends at the front, and they love taxes.
You know, and I don't blame you for it. I blame my government, my government. I'm not Her Majesty, His Majesty. I blame governments of all parties. You lot are in coalition. We have a Labour government. We had a Labour government before. We had a Conservative government. They've all treated local government bad. What annoys me is you criticise the previous administration for doing exactly what you're doing. What annoys me is in a leaflet that went out in yours and the Cabinet Member for Housing's ward in Chickerell last year, it said, vote Liberal. Here's the truth, it said. If you want car parking charges reviewed and reduced, vote Lib Dem in May. 3 car parks are now on a phony trial, quite frankly. It's a phony trial. I can't see any reason for it to continue as it is without some changes to it. And you're introducing nighttime charges. That's within the budget. I know you say we'll look at it later on, but it is within the budget, and it really is going to be a damaging effect to Weymouth. I'll tell you what, me and Ray almost had a fight outside this chamber with our jackets off over his car parking increases. I, as a backbench member of the previous administration, had a duty to hold them to account. Backbench members of your administration have the same duty, and I really urge you to press on this. It's your job just as much as it is ours in opposition. This nighttime charge will be a disaster, if you ask me. Then you said, in one of your leaflets, reverse Conservative cuts and help struggling families. In the election, there was a big lie circulated about the cost of living fund, and I believe it was a lie, in my opinion. A one-off payment was made. You accused us of cutting it. That's fine. You bring it in at 2 million. Now it's 500,000 a year. That, to me, is then a cut. If it was a cut for us, it's a cut for you. What annoys me is people constantly say how much they hate politicians and hate councillors, and you go say one thing at the election, do things another. As you currently stand, you're doing exactly that. You said one thing at the election. You say, oh, it's not in our manifesto, so it doesn't count, is what I think was almost more or less said at the previous cabinet. Does that mean that every other promise contained within these leaflets was quite frankly said just for a political point score and has now been discarded? You promised to cut car parking charges. We're now having a 2-year trial. You know, let's see some turkey on the table, as it were. You said that you were going to reverse cuts. You're now cutting it down to 500,000. You've cut the youth budget from 200 to 100,000. What really annoys me, you promised me council houses. You promised me. Councillor Hope said those words. I almost took him out for dinner. And it's Valentine's Day coming up. But what annoys me is the Cabinet for Housing is now more or less ruled out because of the expense. And I don't disagree with her point. And she never promised me that. I'll give her a fair due. She never promised me council housing. What annoyed me is that 2 Cabinet members, including the leader, did. And you said, if we take control of this council, they will be council house built. Please, it's a reminder, don't promise things, then get in and then go back on them, because it's exactly the same reason your party suffered over tuition fees and you're just recovered now. Same reason Nigel's probably going to overtake us lot. You know, people don't like it when you go back on promises, and I assure you, this budget passes tonight, they won't forgive you for some of the contents within it. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak on it? Councillor Christopher.
Councillor Clifford, Councillor Kimber.
Councillor Christopher.
I do. Councillor Simon Christopher, Marshwood Vale. It is a great shame that I cannot have a discussion perhaps with Shane Bartlett. Shane Bartlett did a good response at the last full council meeting to a question posed by Councillor Spencer Flower in relation to the New Homes Call for Sites Accelerator programme and the 6 sites, and I would have welcomed an update. And it's very disappointing that the leader of the council, who at one point said that he didn't believe in the cabinet system, sits there and is perhaps disparaging towards comments made by Councillor Spencer Flower and also by Councillor Vitali, who is a great housing expert. But I cannot this evening vote for this budget. And why can I not vote for this budget? Because after having attended parish council meetings last night, I asked them about their thoughts on the budget, and I also asked them about the evening car parking charges. And I said to them, do you believe in the 5% increase? Should that happen? And they said no. and they said, I asked them about the evening car parking charges. Should that happen? And they said, no. And I said, did you think it was a good idea for people having to take cash to a cash machine in the dark? And they said, no. And I asked them, was it a good idea in their eyes? These hard-pressed farmers and rural people, was it a good idea that they take their cards and put them by the cash machines? And they said no. So I cannot support this in any way, shape or form. And I pay credit to Councillor O'Leary for pointing out what was on the election material of other parties.
Councillor Kimber, did you want to speak?
Thank you, Chair, fellow councillors. Paul Kimber, Portland. Thank you, wherever you are. I want to start first off by thanking the staff for the work that they've done over the last year. I mean, it's tremendous pressure, and they've been under tremendous pressure to deliver, and I thank them for that. I also thank the many, many voluntary groups in and around Dorset that if they didn't operate, it would be very, very difficult for us. And I think that is what I want to say really about the community. I was really, during this budget process, I was really concerned about the 387 jobs, and I thank the Finance Department for clearing up certain concerns that I had, that we will hopefully find jobs within our organisation for them. I want to say, I think to my friends, if Rachel Reeves was here, I think she would be saying, what a way to start a new government with 21 billion in deficit. And it must have been an absolute nightmare to actually start to try to bring about running the country, running local government, all the various services with that debt hanging over you before you actually got started. I want to say I've heard tonight about economic growth in Portland. I welcome that. We've got a fantastic site, and let's hope that we can go forward on that site and start to see more job creations. It's been fantastic what the companies on that particular site have undertaken. I want to turn now to housing. Today I had a nurse from Birmingham ring me, and she's been offered a job on Portland, and she said, the one thing, Mr. Kimber's stopping me is I'm struggling with housing. So I've given us several organisations, and this one, to start to look for housing, but it's really, she said to me, you know, it's really stopping me coming down there. And I said, well, we want you down there. I said, we're really short of particular staff within the NHS, but we've really got to, and housing has got to be one. And when you've got a ward with the Hardy block still empty after all these years, that could provide decent housing, I think that I would say to the group in charge, please look at that and bring it and do something about it. It's a monstrosity, and I I'm not sure if anybody's not seen it, but you know, when you've got a block that size, and I'll never forget one photograph one of the local residents showed me of kids actually playing in there in that empty block, sitting on top there. That could have been, and it was dangerous, and it is dangerous. So please, make that a priority. I don't know how you're going to do it, but make sure it's done. I want to speak about what my colleague said about the RS.
Yeah, you've had a long speech. Are you just about to finish? Yeah.
Okay. All right. RSG must be looked at.
Ms. Brown would like to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Local council budgets are about priorities. I'm a big believer in don't believe a promise a politician makes you until there's a budget for it. And Councillor O'Leary has very kindly gone through that in excruciating detail. But to me, some of the bigger concerns around this budget, to quote the portfolio holder, is the £14 million worth of cuts within them. And what I find egregious is the deliberate choice of the administration over the last year to turn its back on the £8 million worth of savings that could have been achieved this year. That was a deliberate decision, and that chicken has come home to roost. And that is part of the reason that such a damning budget has been laid before us this evening. A budget which, let's remember, includes slashing the cost of living fund, declaring war on the nighttime economy, and decimating the youth grant. Are those really the priorities of the Dorset people? I can make you a guarantee. The good people of Cranbourne Chase Ward, which I have the honour of representing, that is not their priorities, and therefore I cannot support this budget. This budget is a choice, and it's a choice the administration has made for itself.
Right. No more speakers except Councillor Ireland, who seconded the original proposal. Councillor Ireland.
I'll start my timer. There you go. Lots of points through. I didn't write this, so I've been writing as I go along. I agree with Councillor Parry about the woeful funding for central government. We have a government spending review coming up soon. We live in hope. Council tax. I'll admit I stood here in this chamber and criticised the previous administration for raising council tax. I'm speaking quickly. For raising it by the maximum. The reality is, you have to. There isn't a single council that has social care responsibilities in England that won't do that. Many asked for more. Some of them got it. Councillor Clifford's already mentioned loss of grants is 1.5% of council tax. The Labour government's imposition of increased national insurance employers will cost us another 2%, essentially. You're already over the 3% maximum council tax we can raise. The rest of it is adult social care. I could spend hours talking about this, and I'm sure Councillor Suttle could as well, where we are. Enormous amount of reserves that we've blown through. Really, I'm slightly disappointed that was raised. As Councillor Parry knows, a lot of that was on compliance and is subject to an external audit. Number 5, 8.6 million appears, really. It didn't go to overview for scrutiny for a reason. There wasn't a plan. There wasn't anything to scrutinise. There wasn't any policy to look at. We looked, and to paraphrase Douglas Adams, we went down to the cellar where the lights were out, looked in the locked filing cabinet in the disused laboratory with the sign, beware of the leopard. We didn't find it there. The 8.6 million was backed in the current budget we're living in at the moment by reserves. The reality is the previous administration had no plan and set a deficit budget. That 8.6 million wasn't achieved because there wasn't any way to achieve it. We have set in a plan for transformation. Overnight parking, I'm not going to go into that. I can't be bothered, to be honest. I'm not sure what Councillor Simon Christopher was talking. I don't see any relevance. A mention of cash machines in the dark in the budget. Possibly it's a different document he's reading. I haven't given up on council homes. We're basically prioritising RPs because there's no right to buy on RPs. I won't mention which government introduced that, but hopefully Labour can do something for us and stop that happening, and then we can possibly build council houses. I've got 42 seconds left, so I'll just say this is the beginning. As Councillor Clifford stated before, this is the first Liberal Democrat budget in this chamber for a very long time, and I'm pleased to say it included input from the very first cross-party cabinet in this chamber for a very long time. I'm not sure anybody can remember when that happened last. I expect Councillor Jones probably can. And it's a beginning, and I urge you to vote for it. We've got another 4 years. We have made many promises. I'm not in the practice of breaking promises, and we'll keep as many as we possibly can. Bottom line is, we go to the local electorate in 2029. If we haven't come through on our promises, well, we'll accept that position, but we will. 3 seconds left. Thank you.
We now come to the vote. We're going to have a vote on the whole, all together, the whole point, all the points together. And then we'll do.
Councillors, the vote is now open. Councillor Pothegary, could you vote for me again, please? Thank you. The results of the vote are 49 in favour, 29 against, no abstentions. The vote is therefore carried. Thank you.
Before we carry on with the agenda, we need to have a vote, almost have a vote now to see if we want to continue with the meeting today. We have to finish after 3 hours, or whether we want to come back another day and finish the rest of the agenda. So, shall we just put our hands up?
If you get proposed, just show of hands to accept.
Can we just...
Show of hands.
Just a show of hands, all those who want to carry on. We'll have a break even so, but all those who want to carry on with the other... Yeah. OK, well, we'll carry on with the agenda, but who would like... If anyone would like... We might have a 5-minute break before we do the two items, so we'll be back here in 5 minutes, please. Back at 9:30. Right, we've got item 10 on the agenda next. Councillor Suttle is going to introduce the report. A code of conduct.
Right. Order of governance, yeah. Now, this is a big opportunity for you to agree with me. No, I know it's hard, but this is an opportunity. So it's all really in the paper. Councillor Code of Conduct. It came to Order and Governance. We sent it back. We did a task and finish group. We talked about it at length, and you can see that it came back with the amendments, which are on page 236. All I ask you to do is break a habit of a lifetime and vote for it. Thank you.
I believe Councillor Spencer would like to speak. Sorry, we'd have to seconder. Councillor Spencer.
What I would say when I'm standing up, Chairman, what a good piece of work the officers did around this. Quite complex in places. And we had a small working group, cross-party, looking at the detail, because I felt, and so did Gary, that new members on the committee ought to get a bit of an understanding about what the Code of Conduct was all about. I thought that gave us a great opportunity to do that. Very, high regards to Grace Evans in particular. I will name her. She did a good piece of work there, made it easy for us to adopt it. So please support the recommendation.
Anyone like to speak on this recommendation? Right, we'll go straight to the vote then.
The vote is now open. Councillor Pothecary, would you mind pressing? Thank you. Sorry, thank you.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Thank you. The vote is now closed and the results are 78 in favour, 0 against, no abstentions. It's therefore carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to item 11, the Staffing Committee. Councillor Ireland.
There you go. I'll be brief. The reason this paper's here is obviously because Matt's leaving. The Constitution sets out the way a new chief exec is appointed. I have basically said that we're going to forego the Lib Dem majority on the Staffing Committee, which is why this paper is here. I think it should be a genuine cross-party effort to find a new chief executive. So if this paper is approved, there'll be more than the majority, 3 Lib Dems and 2 Tories, which is what is set out in the Constitution. The members, if this gets approved, will be myself, Councillor Biggs, Councillor Wilson, Councillor Sutton behind me, Councillor Weller, representing the Labour Party, Councillor Rob Hughes, who's going to represent the Independent Group, and Councillor Andrew Parry and Councillor Gary Suttle, representing the Conservatives. We won't meet very often. We have a meeting in the diary, presumptuous, I know, but I'm assuming this is going to get through next week to look at appointing an interim, or how we have an interim. Matt Pross is leaving on the 16th of March. We don't, hopefully we'll have somebody to recommend to full council, again through the staffing panel committee for April full council. In the interim of that, we need somebody to cover being the chief exec. So we need to decide the process and then who's going to do that. So we're meeting next week, fingers crossed, to do that. And then we will also be essentially be the interview panel. And then we'll have a committee afterwards to recommend the successful candidate, which hopefully will be approved the following week at full council. So that's all I'll say. It's something we have to do. Hopefully you can approve it.
I believe Councillor Hughes is going to second.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would like to second this, please. Thank you.
I'd like to talk about this. We'll have a vote then.
The vote is now open. Councillor Flower, would you mind pressing your button again, please?
28's done.
Yeah.
31.
Yeah, 31. Councillor Haynes, would you mind pressing your button, please? Thank you.
That's 7-0.
And 70. Yeah. And Councillor Jill Taylor. Ah, she's gone. Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
It's 27. Still...
And the results of the vote are 75 in favour, no against, 1 abstention. Therefore, the motion is carried.
Thank you. We'll now move on to item 12, and you'll have noticed that Jonathan Mayer has left the room for this one. Councillor Ireland.
And if I may just, Councillor Taylor's not feeling very well, which is why she's left. And Councillor Bartlett is here. He's hiding in the back because he's got a stinking cold and he doesn't want to pass it on to anybody. So this paper is again because Matt Ross is leaving us. The returning officer role is generally held by the chief exec, not always, but pretty much it's fairly common, I think. In our case, Matt is our returning officer. Again, once Matt leaves on the 16th, we won't have a returning officer. We're legally required to have one in the case we have an election. You know, as far as I know, there aren't any coming up. I'm looking to Jackie Andrews to confirm. But we need one. Jonathan Mayer has left the room because this paper is about him, essentially. He's eminently capable of taking that role, and in fact, he's subbed for Matt in the past. We just need to officially appoint him as the returning officer and the electoral returning officer. And I'll just add that the role for the chief exec has been advertised that may include the roles of returning officer, so it's not a guaranteed given, because depending on who we get, depending on their experience, we may decide otherwise, and that decision will have to come back to full council once we have an appointed chief exec to decide whether they will assume the role of returning officer. So that's all I'll say. Thank you.
Councillor Bears, going to second.
It would be churlish not to second that recommendation, Chairman, because obviously Jonathan Mayer knows more about elections than any of us in the room, so I second the proposal.
Anyone like to speak? Councillor Lewitt.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a really quick question, because I'm very happy with the paper as it is, but a comment just then about the potential replacement chief executive may not be returning officer. Can I just have some guarantee and some clarity that the pay that is being offered for the role will obviously change depending on what roles they take, or are we offering more money for less work? I just want to have some clarity on that.
So that's a very good question. So the salary range being advertised for the chief exec is purely for the chief executive role. The money that the returning officer receives actually comes from central government, I think. It's prescribed. It's based on the amount of the electorate. I'm getting nods. Can we call it? It's a bonus for chief execs. Some chief execs, well, it is. I should also. I should point. So the role is obviously a very important one. You can, the book. If you get it wrong, the buck stops with that person who's receiving that money. It's probably fair to say at this point that Matt Prosser has been very generous with the money, and he spreads it out across the team in recognition of their efforts. So Jackie and Susan and everybody else who helps in elections get a cut, I hope. So that's it's true. It's a Brucey bonus. Has that answered your question? So the salary that's been advertised doesn't include the amount that a returning officer would get for an election, and obviously depends on which election. If it's a full council election, it's more than if it's a parish council with 300 electors.
Anyone else want to query? Now we'll go to the vote on that.
The vote is now open. Councillor Lugg, could you vote for me again, please? Thank you. Councillor Andy Skeets, would you mind voting for me again? Thank you. Thank you. And the results of the vote are 78 in favour. The motion is therefore carried. Thank you.
Item 13, the calendar of meetings, Councillor Ireland.
Sorry, it's me again. So this is the calendar of meetings for the upcoming council year. It is what it is. I'm not going to go through it. We have obviously introduced some flexibility for chairs of various committees to change the times so they can be in the morning, afternoon or evening, 10 to or 6:30, I believe. That continues. Some of the meetings are obviously inconvenient for some members. There isn't a particular one-size-fits-all solution, unfortunately. It's probably slightly disappointing that one of the meetings in the calendar is in the February half-term, I believe. Next full council in April, some of the members here won't be here because it's Easter holidays, and who knew? And if you've got kids, you're off on holiday, hopefully. Or in Matt Bell's case, looking after a lot of kids in a skiing holiday, I believe. And so it is what it is. Please don't debate. We've spent a lot of time about this in the past. We haven't changed the policy. The policy is the same as we've been running last year. So please support it. I should point out also that at the chair's discretion, the dates of meetings can be changed. At the times of meeting, it can be changed to accommodate the committee members. So it's not set in stone. It can be changed.
That's going to be seconded by Councillor Bell.
Thank you very much. Happy to second. Councillor Ireland summed it all up, and I suggest we go to the vote straight away.
The vote is now open.
That's done 46. That's done 70.
70, just 70. Oh, she's gone. Yeah, please go. Yep. Thank you. The vote is now closed. 76 in favour, 1 against, no abstentions. The motion is therefore carried. Thank you.
Item 14, but before item 14, the officers have to go. So I'd just like to say, I hope Matt has enjoyed his last meeting here and goes away with the impression that we have differences, a lot of differences, but we are basically a friendly council, and we're all sitting here to do the best we can for the residents of Dorset. And I hope you have a good time in New Zealand. The officers have to leave because we're talking about their pay policy. So we wait till they've disappeared. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Ben Wilson, portfolio holder for Corporate Development and Transformation, South East Purbeck Ward. The Localism Act 2011 requires that local authorities produce an annual pay policy statement setting out their policies on the remuneration of their chief officers and the relationship, the remuneration of their chief officers and their non-chief officers. There are 2 recommendations here. One is recommendation of the content of the pay policy statement before you for the financial year 2025-26, and then to approve the pay policy statement for that year. Importantly, the report includes 2 ratios that look to compare the pay of the chief executive with other officers. As with recent years, higher levels of pay award have been applied in 2024 to employees at the lower end of the council's pay structure, resulting in both ratios, and I should point out the 2 ratios are total earnings and the ratio of pure salary, resulting both ratios having indicated a slight decrease. And in the paper, you'll see that decrease is happening over time, which hopefully we all can see as good news. So I would like to say no more and propose this pay statement.
By Councillor Izzard.
Thank you, Chairman, and I'm gladly second this proposal.
for the pay award, and I think it's well put out, and it's easy to see, and I hope everybody votes for it. Thank you.
Would you like to discuss it or ask questions? Or we go straight to the vote then?
The vote is now open. Councillor Gorringe, would you mind voting for me, please? Thank you.
59.
59. Councillor Robinson, would you mind voting again, please?
70.
And she's gone, yeah. Thank you. And the results of the vote are 75 in favour, no votes against, and 1 abstention. Therefore, the motion is carried. Thank you.
So there are no urgent items, no exempt items. So I'll close the meeting and wish you all a good journey home. I think you'll get home before it's too late.
I voted for the budget. Yeah. Yeah.